Are we all ready?
You're rolling.
2018. Adequate notice of this meeting has been provided by posting on the bulletin board in Village Hall, by mail to the Ridgewood News, the Record, and by submission to all persons entitled. The same is provided by law of a schedule, including the date and time of this meeting. Roll call.
Councilman Hache.
Here.
Councilman Seaton.
Here.
Councilman Voigt.
Here.
Councilwoman Walsh is absent, and Mayor Denton.
Here. Please rise for the flag salute.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Public comment not to exceed, moment of silence. Please join us in a moment of silence for our men and women serving our nation and our first responders. Okay, thank you. Public comment not to exceed 3 minutes per person. So, use the microphone, Boyd, right there. Turn it on. It should be working.
Hello? Okay. Hi, Boyd Loving, 342 South Irving Street. I'm sorry, I was unable to attend last week's budget hearing meeting, and I see that the building department was discussed last week. But I believe that since the building department's budget's been discussed, there was an article in many of the newspapers in New Jersey indicating that the Department of Community Affairs has changed the permit situation, and there are no longer permits required for roofing, minor repair jobs, and plumbing. And I'm not sure whether that revenue loss was discussed last week, and if it was, if you could just tell us what the number is. I'm sorry I missed the meeting, and I just wanted to make sure that that was being taken into account in next year's budget, the projected revenue loss from that change. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. We'll close public comment. Did you want to just run it by?
Yes. Do you want to comment? Okay. We did discuss it briefly. Our building department director had just gotten the actual legislation that day, but as a rough estimate, if we were to have the same types of permits taken out in 2018 as we did in 2017, so the same number of roofing and siding and whatever else is covered in this legislation, it's approximately somewhere between $35,000 to $45,000. Okay.
Okay. All right. So moving on to our discussion items.
So our first discussion item this evening is the Finance Department. So we have Mr. Rooney and Mr. Sanzari here. And then also tax, and that's the one after that.
Okay, so I'll be dealing with Finance Department, Tax Collector, and Parking Utility. So under Finance, and again, it's a combination of all three since I do wear two hats. Our accomplishments are 2017. We dealt with the late school tax billing last year for kindergarten, if you remember. They had the state required us to get bills out at the last minute so they could be assessed for the first half. So we spent a lot of time getting that situated, and my staff did a fantastic job in meeting the deadline. Then we had the fortunate ability to collect $22 million of prepaid taxes this year. And I've only been here 3 years, but the lines were out the door, down the stairs, just to come running in to pay their taxes. And I will interject this, it was on a different attitude. The attitude was friendly, everybody was happy to make their payment as opposed to the quarterly, I have to be there. So it was good to see. We also implemented a new billing system using our Edmunds system. We started this back in 16, and we now have it full running in 17, which allows our departments to keep track of any outside services that we perform for units in the city, in the village, such as the Board of Education, the library, where they can put their time in as far as documenting the hours that they spent on a project, and we can keep track of when we bill it and when we collect it. So that's a big time saver. We hired a new accounts payable clerk who is doing a fantastic job. She had been working part-time over in Public Works, and she came over to us full-time, and I think it's a welcome addition, and everybody's very happy with her performance. And lastly, as it relates to parking, we put a kiosk up at Chestnut Street, which appears to be functioning very well. We haven't, knock on wood, had any issues with it, vandalism or anything of that nature. We do have it, cameras up there that are keeping a monitor on it just to make sure that everything's operating efficiently. So that's a positive. And in this year's budget, you'll see that I've put some more money in to expand that project to other lots or to various streets. Again, not talking to council about it yet, but it's a proposal that I'd like to ask you to entertain. Our goals for 18 is our continued cross-training personnel in our finance department. So especially in events where we had the prepaid tax situation, we had 4 people that were well-versed in going up to the windows and taking care of it. So we kept the process moving quickly and efficiently, and rather than have people, I can only imagine what it would have been like if we only had 1 or 2 people working that window. They would have been out in the parking lot. So it was very efficient. Also for this year, we're going to enhance our fixed asset inventory system. We had a vendor that we had been using for quite some time, which just hadn't worked up to what my level of expectation was. So we're going out to a new vendor. You'll see money budgeted for that this year, and they have a very strong track record. We've done some background research on them with other municipalities, and they're well received. We'll also be solidifying our accounting of capital assets by incorporating specific identification of our IT equipment. I've been working with Dylan to put together master lists of all the computers. And again, this is something he has. It's just a matter of putting it into a format that we would be using for our fixed asset system. So we'll be enhanced with that. We continue to coordinate departmental audits with our external auditing firm to go out and look at, on a rotating basis, different departments to see that they're complying with our 1, purchasing policy, 2, the recognition of revenue, the timeliness of deposits. So we continue to do that and to monitor those, the reporting on that. I'm looking to implement an electronic time reporting and scheduling system this year. We had it on the to-do list for last year. It hasn't come about. The big reason is police was putting a scheduling system together, which I was very interested in. So we sort of wanted to wait and see how that was working out. Appears to be doing very well, and so I'm going to be working with them to see if we can incorporate that into a few other departments on a test basis to see if it's something that makes sense. As I say all the time, we always look to enhance our purchasing practices. As situations arise, we make adjustments to make certain that we comply with the law, and we also appreciate the input of those individuals in the village that try and help us monitor that and make suggestions for improvements. As I said about the kiosk, I'm looking to expand that to other sections of the village. And I also continue to participate in shared service arrangements. We have 2 or 3 that I'll talk about briefly in a couple of minutes. But we try to help price those to make sure that we at least break even, if not make money on the endeavor. The idea being that we're trying to be competitive with other facilities throughout the county, and so we're trying to work with other municipalities and the Board of Education to see that we can give them the best bang for their buck, so to speak, and also make certain that we bring money into the village revenue. So with that being said, I'll go over my budget for 2018. Our budget request is slightly up over last year, and that's because of longevity and step increases. There's nothing other than that in there. From our other expense, we are, again, I'm asking for money for our fixed asset system upgrade, which would be approximately $5,000. I also budgeted $5,000 for potential need for storage costs. We are running out of room, as many departments are in the village. We did address that in our footprint study, but until we get to a point where we're actually going to make a movement to expand our storage facilities, we may need to rent a trailer or outside space just to be able to walk through our office. We're going to get to a point where it's going to be a fire hazard eventually if we just keep stacking boxes, and we don't want to do that. So the $5,000 will be on a short-term basis to sort of work that out. On a side note, I've been having conversations with Chris Rudeshauser to see if there's trailer space down at Water Pollution Control that we potentially could use. Tom Yock is in the same position that we are with the need for space. We decided that that probably wasn't a good answer right now because we have to make certain that it's secure, it's waterproof, so that may not be an issue, a solution to our problem. So we'll keep working with that. And then the last is $5,000 additional for this scheduling system. What I would propose to do, if I can be assured that the police is very satisfied with theirs and go through and sort of test the waters on what I would think would be a department that we could use, such as Public Works, do a parallel testing and see if we can make that work. So that's an additional cost that we put in for this year. Tax collector. Tax collector is basically flat with the exception of other expenses. I think we're up a slight amount because of Edmunds. That's our accounting system. We did have a slight increase this year, and I think that's that'd be a slight increase over what we actually spent last year. And then the moment that you're all waiting for is parking. Try to get to that. Tab 23. That's the one with all the highlights, Jeff. So on page 1, you'll see our revenue stream from 15 through 18.
Sorry, tab 23, you said?
Yeah, 23.
I have 3, 6, 3, 6. I don't see 23.
You have it, Sue?
I do.
Yeah.
Can I send it to you? I don't know if I'll find some.
Yeah.
Some of us are really trying to be paperless. We appreciate everyone's patience while some of us try to utilize our technology and signature.
That's where we want to be.
Thank you. Got it.
So on the first page, we have the revenue stream and anticipated revenue from 15 through 18. Parking meter revenues are slightly up over last year by about $4,000. And so basically, as I've been saying all along, it's relatively flat to what we anticipated. You'll notice the parking surplus anticipated has decreased to roughly $60,681. Our remaining surplus balance is $283,000. So if we had to, we could have some movement on that. But right now, we've used that $60,000 to balance our projected budget. So if we go to the next page, and you'll see what I'm referencing to. So under salaries and wages, We're up over last year. We're hiring, our plan is to hire another full-time PEO to increase our staff, increase the ability to write citations, to enforce the parking rules. And with that, the other expenses are also up for statutory expenditures as it relates to contributions to benefits because of that full-time PEO. The last line of that next page you see goes down from $450,000 to zero. And at this point in time, we're holding that to wait for what the general fund is going to look like as far as the revenue stream and what would be needed in our from surplus from parking. So we do not have $450,000 that we did last year. So right now we put zero in, but that can go up to $250,000 if that's needed. But I won't know that till we get to the end of this process. So with that, I'll entertain any questions.
You're going to talk about capital?
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry, I apologize. Yes. So the last page of that tab is capital. So I put $60,000 for those additional kiosks that I'm proposing we move forward with. And again, it's a matter of discussing where we want to implement that, the use of that, and if we want to do it on a test basis, continue for another 6 months and expand it to a couple of more if we want to do that, or if we want to go out and purchase it. So right now it's sitting in capital. And I put $11 million into the budget for construction of Hudson Street Garage. Again, placeholder. It's something that we haven't finalized, but it's there just to let you know that it's potential.
We know.
Yes, we do.
Okay.
Now we'll go to question.
All right. It's not on. All right. Do we want to start with Councilman Voigt?
That was a test.
And if you don't mind, when you're asking questions, or would you mind just telling us what page specifically you're looking at? That helps everybody follow along.
So, Mr. Rooney, thank you for doing this. Just again, can you review a couple of the line items on the main page, which is line item or account number 29 and other contractual services, which have gone up 5,000, and then
And this is for finance, is that right?
this is finance.
Okay.
Yes, I apologize.
Okay.
It's finance, and then purchase of office equipment. We don't. Are we capitalizing that or no? We don't capitalize office equipment.
No, usually not.
Okay, so it's just
It's usually not over $5,000 or...
no. Okay, so that's at 5,000. Just help me understand again what those.
All right, so we'll start with 29.
Yeah.
So 29 is where I mentioned the fixed asset system.
Yep.
That is to enhance what we presently had. We did not, the services that we got, I don't think we budgeted anything or paid out anything last year because what we received from the company we were dealing with was really not acceptable to me. So I'm putting the $5,000 in for this year to cover that cost. And then the other $5,000 related to storage costs. So if I need it and we go through with a temporary location, that's where I charge that $5,000.
The fixed asset system is now what does that do? Help me understand.
All right, so when I say we, the village is responsible for accounting for all the vehicles, the buildings, the furniture, whatever is in their system on an annual basis. Okay, so we had engaged a company to do that for us. So they would come in, look at our, they first came in, I guess, back in the 90s, Steve? Yes. Back in the 90s, and they did a massive inventory of everything we had. So that was the basis. So every year after that, they would come in and update it based upon what we had in our capital, what acquisitions we made, and then we would look at what we disposed of if we had any surplus sales or things like that and took it off the system. Okay. In the last couple of years, there's not many of these companies left. They've been overwhelmed. Okay, and for whatever reason, I guess Ridgewood didn't get high on their list. So we were always trying to get them in at the last minute before the audit got started, and that's not the intention of the fixed asset system. It's not to comply with the audit, it's to keep good internal controls as to what we have. So they didn't step to the plate as far as I'm concerned, so we're going with a new vendor. And the next one you had was?
Well, so I have questions on some of this. On the salaries, it's the longevity and
Steps,
steps?
yes.
There's nothing we can do about that?
No, they're contractual.
Got it, okay.
Same head count.
Yep, all right. So, 23, several questions. Tab 23. You said that this $60,000 surplus is squishy
Oh, I'm sorry.
at
I was
best?
Wrong side. Let me
Yeah.
get to tab 23.
Yeah. You said they may be 250, you said 283 first and then 250.
We have,
Movement in surplus. Help me understand how that, we have some fungible
okay.
money we can put there.
So the surplus is generated from profits, obviously. So during the year, you have the balance that we started with, Steve? Surplus? I'm sorry. I'll give you the opening balance on it.
Yeah.
So let's say we had $800,000 in surplus. We used $450 in this budget to send over to the general fund in the budget, okay? So that brings it down to, say, $400,000, $300,000, okay? So being flat this year, we didn't generate as much surplus as we had in the past. So now I have a surplus balance at the end of December of $283,000.
Okay.
I used the 250 as not taking it all, to take
Yeah.
some of it, to balance it out. But basically what has happened is we have, the parking utility has paid back the general fund for all the shortfalls that were incurred in the several years of
Right.
coinage. Okay, so basically we're done with that. So now we're running flat.
Okay. Got it. Okay. The cap, you're looking at your capital sheet. You've got them in as request but not recommended. I mean,
That's
so-
because we haven't sat with council to bless
Okay.
the capital budget.
Okay, and so those kiosks, how many kiosks does that represent at 60?
At 60, that could be up to 10.
Up to 10 kiosks?
They were roughly $6,000 to purchase.
Okay,
My proposal would be that we test them as far as renting them first
Yeah.
and trying them out in the lot. And then if that succeeds, we can purchase them and we could charge that test period to capital.
okay. But you haven't identified where they may be?
No, we haven't had that conversation yet.
Okay, all right. Yeah, I think that's it. Thank you
Okay, you're
very
welcome.
much.
Deputy Mayor?
Thank you. Thank you, Bob.
You're welcome.
So in the parking utility, how much of a surplus have we been getting for the past several years, and what could we expect going forward in that?
In 2016 is when we had okay, so at 1/1/17, we opened a balance of $725,000, okay? We budgeted, as I said, the 450 and came up to 283,000 right now. But to answer your question, we had an influx of $700,000 back in 2016.
The insurance?
Right. That generated surplus.
Okay.
So that's what we're working off of. So going forward, assuming the rate structure stays the same as it is right now, it'll probably run about $1.3 million every year for revenue, based upon what we've done. So that's
Okay, so then it would just basically cover itself?
correct.
Going forward, without
Correct.
any kind of fee increases or times or anything else that we might be contemplating?
That's correct.
Okay, if there's any additional, I mean, I guess if a garage gets built, any kind of additional surplus would be put towards the debt service on whatever
Absolutely.
bond we would have to issue, so then it would stop going to the general fund, but it's been, the surplus, I guess, from the parking utility has been going to the general fund to pay off both the coin theft and the deficits that were run in, I guess, 2008, 9, 10, around there?
Yes,
All right.
absolutely.
All right, I think that's it, thank you.
You're welcome.
So Bob, so that means that any additional costs incurred by the parking utility to finance the garage is not going to create a budget gap anywhere else in the municipal budget, is it?
Let me back up. So if you have an ordinance to purchase a garage, you have to have a down payment. So you're going to have to budget that down payment. So depending on the cost, it could be about $500,000–600,000. So then we have to figure out how we're going to get that money to get the down payment. So it's a lot of what ifs going down the road.
Sure.
So I don't have an answer, a direct answer to your question, because I don't know where that's going to fall out.
Right. But since the money's not going to general fund anymore, we're not creating any gaps in the general fund because the surplus now rests completely with the parking utility.
So right now, if you take away this $450,000 going to the general fund, we have to make it up in the general fund someplace. So it's either going to be in additional revenues, which we're hoping to be able to do. We've had excess revenues in certain areas this year, or it's going to have to be in cutting expenses, depending on where we want to fall out.
Surplus, we're expecting this to be flat, basically, right? We're generating 1.3, we're spending about 1.3.
You're flat, yes.
Right. So there's no expectation for surplus in 2018.
Right. It's gone.
Right, okay. The kiosks, I know you mentioned leasing versus purchasing. I mean, do we really want to be purchasing kiosks? Why would we want to do that as opposed to leasing and having a service level agreement with the provider to replace them when necessary and service them and so on?
Well, what we did right now is we did a 6-month lease to see if this was going to work. So it appears to be successful from the standpoint of users, being happier because they can use change now, they can coinage, because it's in a lot that doesn't have that ability. In other lots, we have meters. So I'm not inclined to jump in and buy a kiosk right away. In that area, I'd like to test it and see if it's going to function just as well there, with the potential even taking the meters out. Again, we're still in a test phase as far as I'm concerned. It's too early to say we should purchase. So that's why we've been doing it on a test basis.
But the traditional parking meter technology doesn't really evolve over the years. If you look at the meter today, they operate the same way that it would have operated 10 years ago. Kiosks, I would imagine, a little more software, were probably subject to more upgrades. So would we be better off instead of buying them to sort of rent them from providers, or no?
Again, it's a financial decision we can make. I haven't gotten that far yet because I'm not certain we're going to continue with it. It's just, I think we have to expand into lots now where we have meters, because now we're adding credit card usage to it, which we haven't had before. So, there's other aspects that are...
But the meter that we have now, what does it cost to rent it?
What does it cost? I'm sorry.
The kiosks that we have now, what's the cost to rent that?
I think it was $900 a month, if I'm not mistaken.
And they cost about 6,000?
6 to 7. But we have an agreement with them on this one that it'll go towards the cost of purchase.
Thank you.
Well,
Just back to that issue. How many kiosks do you envision for that number?
we could potentially get, I think they're roughly 6, you could get up to 10.
Right.
But I would do the lease arrangement maybe on 1 or 2 more before I got that far.
So when we're looking at kiosks, then doesn't our manpower requirement lessen because you're working on your payment system is different than emptying meters, and so there should be. So is there an analysis? I guess the first question, 2 questions, 2-part question. Is there an analysis of the existing kiosk that we're going to be provided to understand the kind of usage and the cost involved? And then if we were to place these kiosks and remove meters, then how does that impact the collection times? And where is, I guess there has to be, we could invest 60 and maybe save 200, maybe we invest 60 and save 100, maybe we invest 60 and save nothing. I think that's an important analysis, especially in the middle of a budget.
So right now, where the kiosk is, has no meters, so there's no
That I know.
evaluation to
Right.
savings or time. That's why I'm suggesting we put in one or two other lots possibly that have meters. Okay, we can bag those meters if we need to, or we can let them both run, just to see how it functions and how it would operate, and if we get increased use because of the allowability of having credit cards that we don't have right now.
And then just going back to those what-ifs. I don't like what-ifs. I don't like that kind of speculation. How do we get that to be a little bit more concrete? When is that more concrete?
I'm sorry, on which,
Your what-ifs on the cost for a down payment.
so it's 5% of the debt that you're going to authorize. So if it's $10 million, it's $500,000.
Right.
Okay. So if we go forward with the garage, we will have to come up with a down payment that has to go into the budget. So if it's not now, and we decide to do this garage, say, in September, we're going to move forward with it, there's a term that I don't want everybody to get upset about, but you would pass an emergency authorization for the down payment. And that would mean that the $500,000 would have to be raised in the subsequent year's budget.
So just the down payment would be an emergency authorization. And then that would be, and how, just explain that a little bit more about, and I'm familiar with them, but just so the public understands.
So similar to the special emergency for revaluation, you would raise it in subsequent year's budget. In this case, you would have to raise it in the next year's budget. You couldn't do it over 5 years like a special, it's a regular
Right.
emergency.
So you can't spread that over the 5
No.
years like we did with other, okay. So that, okay. All right, does anyone have any other questions because of that? Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I do. So you've got, and I don't know where this appears on your sheet for the expenses for the parking utility.
Just tell us tab and page if you
Yeah,
don't
so
mind.
it's tab 23, it's the operating costs, parking utility operating.
Okay?
So you've got allocations for various people in the village hall to the parking utility, right? So for instance, you're 50%.
Correct.
How the heck do you come up with that? Why are you at 50%? You're spending 50% of your time on parking?
I spend a lot of time on parking.
Do you?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, at least 50%.
Yeah, sometimes most of my day could be taken over by parking. There are inquiries, there's issues with collection problems, or so again, it's a.
So where does that appear in the operating expenses? What line item is that? Because you've allocated that.
So if you look on tab 01ER,
01ER.
right?
Where's the number?
Right, I don't, what page is it?
01ER.
Oh, you're saying the 01Z?
01Z. Oh, okay. So that's indirect, right?
Yes.
Okay. Got it. Yeah. Okay. Got it.
That would be your budget credits on each department.
It just seems to me like you're allocating a lot of indirect expenses to the parking utility that, I mean, it seems to me an inordinate amount of time the village hall is spending on parking. And it's, it's not a major cost. It is a
It
big cost.
it doesn't balance out, you're
Yeah,
correct.
yeah.
But it is time consuming.
Okay, and so you're feeling, and because it's kind of inflating, to me, it's inflating the costs of operating this. And Heather's got 20% of her time, is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I would say it is
Okay.
20% of my time.
yeah, all right.
It's not just the parking garage or the parking PEOs, but it's also, it relates to parking in general, just everything about it, whether it's times or meters or ordinances that are adopted, or, things
Okay.
like that.
I would bet Jay, Chuck, and I talk at least twice a week on parking issues, and dealing with things that are going on. Park Mobile may have a challenge, or, something's not working, and it's time consuming. It doesn't, the cost of it doesn't represent, the value that you put into it.
Yeah, but it does make this operating budget look not so good.
The other thing we can do, we can go back, obviously, and revisit the amount of time that people put into it.
Yeah.
It's a moving target, because, some...
Yeah, I don't want you to spend a lot of time on it. but
No, no, I
I'm just
understand your
curious as
concern.
to- Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
I actually thought they were conservative numbers. Honestly, knowing how much time is spent, I thought the numbers were remarkably conservative.
Yeah, I would agree with you.
okay.
So Bob, in terms of the 5% down payment for bonding, would the same apply if we were doing an interest-only 3-year?
Yeah, because you're looking at the appropriation side of the cost, the ability to spend, the authorization to spend, and the state requires that there be a cost of issuance associated with that. So bond counsel, advertising, printing, they all get wrapped up into that 5%. So you have to take what you're going to call the construction costs and add back to it these ancillary costs.
Yeah, but we're not bonding it, though. I mean, according to what Ramon is.
You still have to have an appropriation.
You do.
Yeah, so in that appropriation would be the cost of construction plus any costs associated with it, this 5% being one.
And that's by statute?
That's by statute.
You have to do that?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Just on that line of discussion, it's a little bit of a non sequitur, but just a question, and probably Steve might be able to answer. If you were doing interest only on a loan like that, and then somewhere down the line, you had to bond it. So somewhere, it could be 2 years, could be 3 years, could be next year. But what happens if you don't get the votes to bond, or there's a petition? So, and maybe these are legal questions, but isn't that now just rolling the dice with a real risk and putting the village at risk? And it's just something that, kind of popped across my brain the other day, and I just thought I would ask.
Before you can get the interest, again, this is my take on it, before you can get any type of financing arrangement, you need to have the project in place. So you can't just go out and get financing without the other
Exactly.
side of the coin. So you now have the appropriation set up. In that appropriation, if you were to do an interest-free loan, you'd be capitalizing the interest, so you're probably adding costs back to that 10 million, 11 million, whatever it is.
Right.
And then you're getting to that point where then you have to bond. So to your point, if it didn't succeed, we're probably in the 1%. I don't know what the answer is yet. I'd have to find out for you. I don't know what would happen.
Yeah, and I guess it's just something that we need to consider, because in my mind, there's a significant risk in that thing.
I would think again, this isn't an official comment here, but I would think there'd have to be some type of backing by the general fund taxation that would say if this didn't go through, it would fall back to the general fund. And
Right.
it'd have to be raised by taxes.
Right, exactly right, okay. Any other questions on that? Okay.
All right, so we'll move on to engineering. We have Chris Redesauser here, our village engineer.
And that will be
Tab
tab
6.
number 6. So there's a whole bunch of number 6s.
Where would you like me to sit?
Anywhere, wherever you're comfortable.
What's that? Oh, good. Right next to the electrical outlet.
So we also have Jim O'Connell here from Traffic and Signal. I think and building maintenance. But what we'll do is we'll go each individual division and then ask for questions after each division, since they are quite different. Each individual division does different tasks.
Who's first? Okay, good evening, Mayor and Council. I guess you would like us to lead off with engineering? Okay. Engineering had a challenging year last year. We did a lot of paving. We had 2 paving contractors working in the village. We felt we got a lot of work done. The council has been very generous in its allocation for 2018, and that recommendation to award will be to your meeting next Wednesday. And then hopefully we can get a jump on the season. We help, as you may be familiar, we help a lot of other departments with their engineering needs. In 2017, we got the Safe Routes to School grant. Our staff just attended a seminar at Rutgers today for the federal grant responsible person in charge. It's the criteria that we need to satisfy to implement and process the grant. Going forward in 2018, there'll be a number of challenges and projects we have besides paving. We have to renew the operating permit for Lakeview. We're currently in discussion with operations as to the direction we want Lakeview to go. I don't know if Mr. Calvi has discussed that at all with the council, but there's some thoughts, and as we figure out how we want to go, we'll present it to the council. That permit has to go to DEP by middle of April. We're going to continue to work with Bergen County Engineering on the improvement of our traffic lights at our various intersections. The council has authorized the survey work. That survey work has already started. As soon as that's done, we'll continue the conversation with the county. At some point in time, the county will come back with an interlocal agreement that will be presented to the council to work out the division of responsibilities and getting that project moving forward. We anticipate continuing with our Safe Sidewalk campaign. That's a campaign that we have had for a number of years now, where we identify defective sidewalks and send the residents letters requesting that they fix it. Most of these locations are uplifted and faulted sidewalks. We've had a lot of positive feedback on that. We have also had some negative feedback on it. I'm not going to mislead the council. A lot of the issues with sidewalks are unfortunately related to trees within the public right-of-way. So that's something we work with Dan Kremblatt at the Parks Department to help resolve. I believe that the council knows we were very successful with our DOT municipal aid grant for 2018. We were able to fit it into the current paving project as an addendum, and this was the most generous grant the DOT had ever given the village in my tenure with the village, which is now 15 and a half years. I believe the village got $215,000. So that's going to go a long way and buy a lot of asphalt for us. We are going to continue to work with Age-Friendly Ridgewood. We have a meeting scheduled in the coming weeks. They have some ideas for putting benches to help some of their population rest in their travels. A lot of those folks live in Ridgecrest and walk to our local shops and supermarkets. And there has been some requests to provide like an accommodation so that they can rest up in their travels, because for some of them it's quite difficult. We are also going to take the information Age-Friendly had provided us on defective sidewalk areas, and once the weather clears, we're going to try to start getting some of that addressed also. I think in the 2018 budget request, we had a request for an additional staff person. This would be to fill the vacancy from when Bill Moe retired, I think about 7-8 years ago. And I'm not quite sure as to how that is right now, Bob.
I think at this time it's removed.
Okay, we'll have to ask for it again next year.
Okay.
All right. And that's about it on engineering. If there's any questions, we'll be happy to. Oh, do we want questions at the end or at each segment?
Now.
Oh, if there's any questions.
You didn't have any capital requests for engineering besides the paving?
Yes, we had a capital request for engineering. There's a replacement pickup truck, but I think that fell to the axe in the capital budget meeting. Yeah, do you want to cover that under engineering or under the sub-departments?
Sure. Put it under engineer. So, it should be right at the back of the engineering section.
Yeah.
Our capital requests, besides paving, we also have a couple storm drainage projects. One up on Monte Vista we want to correct a section of storm drainage that doesn't work very well and has been a source of very valid complaints from residents. We're looking at concrete restoration at a number of locations. We have some fence repair. We have a consideration for rebuilding or repairing the weir in the Hocus Brook. This is a weir that is just south of the Spring Street Bridge. This weir backs the water up a little bit so that it goes through some side water channels off of Brookside. We had some money, we put in some money for the Shedler house. We'll see how that goes and what direction the council wants to go. And we have a horse farm. We were looking at making an addition to the playground, but I believe that was another project that has been deferred as part of the capital budget process.
Yes, you're correct.
And one other thing I think we also put in there was a sum of money for the Kings Pond Dam. Again, that did not make the capital budget this year. It'll be a placeholder. We'll see how it works next year. Let's see, we also had requested some money for traffic signal design on Maple and Franklin. We're going to have to see how that goes, whether that's going to be needed, depending again how the interlocal with Bergen County presents things.
Okay. Want to do questions now? Okay. Questions. So, you want to start with Councilman Hache?
No questions, thank you.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you, Chris. When do you expect the sidewalk improvement program might be finished?
That's a very generic question. Can I ask you to clarify it? I mean, if we look at defective sidewalks, that's pretty much an ongoing process. We try to coordinate how many locations we identify with the Parks Department, because as I said, many of those locations have trees in the right-of-way being a cause of an uplifted slab. And then when the slab is either removed to be reset or removed to be recast, there's often a root grinding necessary, and our Parks Department does that. Or, unfortunately, as we saw last year on Hillcrest, a number of trees had to be removed. We have to coordinate that with Parks because they do have a very heavy workload as it is for the tree crew. And if we have found that if we send out too many letters to residents and everybody decides to get the work and hires contractors, contractors have had a habit of lifting up the slabs and then leaving those slabs missing for quite an extended period of time, and we have found that that's a problem, particularly on streets that are walking routes to the local schools. So, you know, working with Parks, we're going to try to reduce that, send out letters, they'd have a response, send out some more letters. I don't know if that's addressing the question you pose.
Kind of, but let me rephrase it then, because I guess it started, you really started a big push. You'd send people out in the spring, I guess, and that was maybe, what, 5 years ago or 6 years ago?
I believe so. I can't say for certain. We've been doing it for a number of years.
Right, I think it might have been that long, maybe a little bit longer. Do you have any idea when you would end up covering the whole village and all the sidewalks one time with people going out then? You know?
I would probably figure it at least another 3 years.
Okay.
A lot of the village does have sidewalks.
Yeah.
And again, it's how much work we generate in coordinating that with the Parks Department. When we weren't careful, we had, like I said, we had too many complaints.
Like Wall 3, that one year they were
Yes,
open.
there were some issues there.
Right.
Correct.
But I would guess that when that 3 years expires, perhaps the ones that were first replaced may need to be replaced again. So it seems to me it'll be probably a continually ongoing process.
Well, I would think that once you did the entire village, then it probably wouldn't be as intense as it was, because then if everything was done, then you'll have an issue here, an issue there. But it seems like, you know, my whole point is like it's not a new program because it's 5 or 6 years old, but it's something that hasn't been done. It wasn't done in the past until it was done. So that's what I was just trying to figure out, is how long it would take to give one push through the village and then basically have all the sidewalks looked at. So then, of course, it would be still ongoing, but it wouldn't be as intense ongoing as it is now, because presumably you will have fixed at least all the sidewalks once in the village in a span of 8 or 9 years.
Yeah, I think that's correct. Once we, as Heather said, once we've had a go-through, it's going to be more of a maintenance issue.
Right.
And yes, you won't have so many locations at once, because it does take time for, if a tree root is lifting a sign, it takes time for it to lift and become a real problem.
Yep. Okay, thank you. That's all I had.
Councilman Boyd?
Yeah, Chris, can I go to your capital budget lines? So the road paving program, you have 2.35 million for that. Does that include any help? Does that include the grant in that? You have a county $300,000 county grant. Is that included in that number, or is that we get another 300,000 on top of that?
It's included.
It's included.
And, sorry to correct you, Councilman, that's the state municipal aid from the Department of Transportation.
Okay.
It's both the 2017 grant, which was, I think, around 140,000 for North Pleasant,
Yep.
and the one I just mentioned that we got for Hillcrest.
Okay. And do you have with that number, do you have a schedule as to what's going to get paved for the what streets?
Yes, we have a list of streets that we put into the bid document.
Yeah.
I believe I sent it up to Heather. I can send it up to her again for you.
We can share that with you,
Yeah,
absolutely.
and share it with the, I guess, the public too, so they're, I don't know, is that possible?
The only thing is that we may or may not get to all of them this year, because obviously we try to do the ones near the school over the summer before the schools begin, and then what happens at times is it gets cold or we get snow and then we have to stop, and so we can put it out there, but I know we already have some streets that were not done last year that are
Correct.
going to be done first this spring. So, you know, it's kind of, yes, but we can't tell them exactly when they're going to be done. So,
I mean, if we put it out as a priority list, then, I mean, you know, is that even,
I think the priority list would be difficult, you
Yeah.
know. Do we leave it up to the contractor pretty much, except for like the schools and
Well,
those areas?
to your point, we try to coordinate with the schools. It's like last year we had the 2016 municipal aid grant was for Morningside, and we did that when Willard School was not in session. Obviously, we had to do that at that time because that was quite a lengthy and large section from North Monroe down to Hillcrest. We have to do that. We have to coordinate that. We have to see what the contractor does. And also, in fairness to a contractor, we try to lump streets together in an area. However, we do not like to just pave all the streets in one area because then other sections of the village may feel slighted. We like to do work in every area of the village, so every community sees some effort on addressing their streets.
okay. Thank you. So, the Shedler Field Phase 2 site, is that for the parking lot?
Excuse me?
The 831,000 here, is that for the parking?
That's for parking or for some of the initial work that would be considered there. The house needs a potable water connection. It needs a connection to the sanitary sewer collection system. And if funds permit, we'd probably start looking at what kind of parking lot we could put on the site for whatever uses are developed there in the future.
So part of that money is for the house itself? Is that right?
We have to consider some money for the house because we're currently working on getting the roof done. Okay. And after the roof, we're going to go the subsequent steps for addressing the issues inside.
But the thing above it says Shedler House 250,000. Is that, what was that for, Chris? Is that something different?
No.
It isn't?
It's just how it was broken out on the sheet.
So these two, I'm sorry, I'm being a little bit dense here. Shedler House and the Shedler Field, are they partly, both of them for the Shedler House and the field, or is it just one for the house and one for the field?
Right now, I think the village's priority is addressing the roof on the house. I think you folks on the council had a presentation on the pre-qualification process because it is a historic structure and needs a historically cognizant contractor. We have an idea what that cost will be, but once we get, we don't know yet until we get the bids in. And then once we have the bids in and the council wishes to proceed, we can see what is remaining for any additional work to be considered on the site.
Okay, so that's part of the 831,000?
Yeah, I believe it is.
Jeff,
Yeah.
the 250 was approved by council last year,
Okay,
and that had to do with the cleanup
yeah,
as well, so.
okay. So there's money left over then? from, yeah, we have 100,000 for the cleanup.
I couldn't tell you what's left over yet.
I believe Councilman Voigt is correct. We just finished the work cleaning up the fallen trees and down trees. I think that was just under 100,000. So the remainder would be still available for the next tasks at that location.
Okay, got it. Thank you. And so, some other line items you have in here, I'm just curious, there's some big numbers, like 446 Grove Street, 300,000. What is that?
Oh, that is a parcel that we proposed the village acquire. It is underwater generally. It's in the flood hazard area, and it could address some of our open space issues, but at the capital budget hearing, it did not make the cut.
Right.
Okay, got it. And then you've got down at the bottom the traffic signal from Maple and Franklin. Maple, is that one light or two lights?
That's just the whole lights, because we have the lights starting in order from basically going east, from east going west. We have the light at Maple, East Ridgewood Avenue. And then we come to the light at Maple and Franklin. Then we come up to the light at Franklin and Oak. The Franklin Oak one is going to be a little in the background, but not too far in the background, because the county is considering resurfacing Franklin Avenue. So if we have any conduit work that we need for a light upgrade, we need to get that in, because we look a little foolish if we work with the county on paving a street and then we dig it up 2 years later to put conduit in. So we need to plan that. And then the next light would be up at Franklin and Broad.
Okay. So these two line items are for those 4 lights. Is that right? Is
That would be a design effort for those 4 lights. Again, as I mentioned, once we get the interlocal agreement from the county, we'll have a better financial handle on the village's responsibilities, the county's responsibilities, and who does what where.
Yeah.
And then once we know what those costs are, they could be possibly taken out of this budget if this is sufficient. If there's surplus in this, it could be to the lights they're not going to address of those that I mentioned.
Okay. And so there's, do we have a budget for those 4 lights? Or just an overall budget?
Overall budget has not been determined yet.
Okay.
And the reason it hasn't been determined yet is we're still at the very preliminary phase. The village just commissioned the survey work. There may be, the village saw what the county had as a very conceptual plan. The county's conceptual plan had some land takings. Whether those need to be done or the extent of them, there'll be a cost associated with those also.
Okay. And then you've got the line items here, the pedestrian crossing lights and bump outs. And what is that for specifically?
The pedestrian crossing lights, the Traffic and Signal Division installed one recently over here on Linwood Avenue by your Graydon Pool.
Yeah.
It's an activated light. You have the regular crosswalk warning signs, but when you push the button, they're solar powered, you get flashing light beacons. Again, to better get the attention of motorists that someone is going to cross the crosswalk, please stop.
Okay.
We have a couple locations we'd like to consider them in the future. One, for example, is the crosswalk on Maple Avenue from the library over towards Kings. That's a heavily used crosswalk, also by our staff, and you have to hope that cars stop, and anything that gets the motorists' attention that they do stop would be possibly a benefit.
Okay. I would be in favor of several of these things on the traffic signal side to be recommended. That's just my personal view. I don't know how other people feel about
Can
it.
you just say that again, Jeff?
Yeah, I'd be in favor of moving some of this. You know, you've got an initial request that we're not authorized.
Which one specifically?
Well, the pedestrian crossings, 100,000, no. I'd be in favor of that.
Well, we funded half, right? 20,000, it was 40,000?
No, it was 100,000. It was 100,000. 100,000 is nothing. Yeah, so I would. Yeah, I would.
I'm sorry, I'm in the
Yeah,
wrong
that's okay.
place.
Yeah, I'd be in favor.
I see.
Yeah,
With the lights and bump outs?
yeah, I'd be in.
Okay.
I'd be in favor of doing that.
Okay. If that's the case, then,
And I don't know how other people feel about it.
From somewhere else.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Okay,
that's just
yeah.
something to keep in mind.
Crossing above it, where we gave you 20,000 out of 40 requested.
Let's see, Above it?
Right below Grove Street.
446 Grove.
Pedestrian crossing, 40,000 to 20,000.
That's usually the crosswalk warning signs and some of the signage that we need. Some of that signage has unfortunately at times a short life expectancy.
I'd also be in favor of moving some, I know you didn't have it in 2018, but the monies for designing the traffic signals on Maple and Franklin, I would, my recommendation or suggestion would be is that we do allocate money. We don't have it this year, but that we do. There's nothing there. I would, that would be my, my thought. So, okay.
Okay, that's it, no more questions.
Thank you, by the way.
It's your turn, Mayor.
No, I'm actually good. I'm good.
Okay.
Okay, so
questions
next,
were actually asked.
division is the Traffic and Signal Division. Jim O'Connell, our Supervisor of Traffic and Signal, is here to discuss it with you, and Mr. Weatherspoon.
Okay, as Heather said, Jim's here, he's our supervisor, he runs the department, and he does a very, very good job of it. He's one of our longest tenured employees in the village, and he really knows where everything is. Correct?
Thank you.
The Signal Division is in some ways, the village's handyman force. They're the first department or division that's called upon to help fix something with our buildings. For example, last night we had an issue with the heating system in the courtroom. Called the on-call person, just happened to be an individual that has gone to school in the last year or so for HVAC system. He went on the computer and he also checked the units. And as far as I know, everything was fine and the problem was resolved. In the future, we are looking at redoing the HVAC system in the building, and Ryan is going to be, again, our first person to go to maintain it and operate it if it goes out of sorts. Okay, your turn. Whatever you want. Your department?
We talking about operating?
Yeah, operating.
Okay. Like Chris said, one of our most difficult jobs is maintaining the buildings. Some of our buildings are pretty old, haven't had a lot of improvements. Constantly, just this week, we had a garage door that failed, a couple heating complaints that we're taking care of. A lot of times it's, we replace a pump, we replace valves. The building that we reside in has a 30-year-old heating system. It was one of the things we were asking on the capital budget to be replaced. Unfortunately, when these things break, it's at the worst possible time. Coldest day, hottest day for air conditioning. Garage doors, when the fleet maintenance needs to have them working, they fail. Can't get a truck into a sanitation building. So we're there, we respond right away, try to make some repairs. Most of the repairs we do in-house, some we still have to do an outside vendor. We maintain all the traffic, most of all the traffic signals in town. Again, we respond very quickly, low cost, maintaining these lights. Recently, we've started with the fiber optic system in town. We piggybacked off the Board of Ed, who's had their system up for about 12, 14 years. They were very nicely let us join, saved us a lot of money. We've expanded it to every village building, to communications, telephone, radios, alarms, because Verizon, who we have been renting copper lines from, has told us that they're going out of business. And I believe in 2019, we're going to lose a lot of this. So we've been trying to get the fiber lines quickly in place, which we have. So Dylan can hook up some of his stuff, telephones and whatnot, so we can continue without any loss of service. Let's see. Coin collection, with the parking meters, we do the coin collection for the parking meters. We also do the maintenance. Once a week, the guys go out in a group and we empty all the street meters once a week, parking lots every other week. And we bring it back down here to Village Hall where it's secured, locked up, and then picked up by our armored car service where it's taken away. Parking meter repairs are made as they're notified to us, either through the police, residents, people coming into Village Hall, central dispatch. We get them, usually go out either that day or the next day. Street signs, we had a problem a couple years ago with a printer we had. We asked if we could be trained on it. We were not allowed to go out of state at the time for a village policy. We weren't able to get training on it. We did not realize that the machine was not operating up to par. And unfortunately, some of the signs that we made maybe 4 or 5 years ago have to be replaced. So we're in the process of doing that. And also some of our signs have been out there for quite some time. We're also replacing that. Using temporary help, summer help if you want to call it, help us out in that situation. In the last couple of years in the operating budget, we have asked for an additional person to not only help out with signs, but any other repairs that we do. Unlike some of the departments that can have money coming in, we don't have that opportunity, but when we go out and make a repair, we save money for the village. Because just one small plumbing job can be $600, $700, where we have trained staff and go out and take care of it in an hour. So I think that's about it.
One other thing that the department does make a slight amount of revenue. Sorry.
The department does make a slight amount of revenue because the Borough of Glen Rock uses the service of traffic and signal, and they compensate us for the time and effort that the department expends. So we don't have a formal arrangement with them, but we do have an arrangement to maintain their fiber optic network for Glen Rock and Glen Rock Board of Ed, in addition to for Ridgewood Water Company, right?
Yeah, recently we have been running fiber lines for Ridgewood Water to all the facilities in Ridgewood and Midland Park. And we're looking into possibly doing some work in Wyckoff and Glen Rock also. Every time we run a fiber line to a Ridgewood facility, they can eliminate their Verizon air card. They're also able to transmit camera images from the pump stations, which is recommended by Homeland Securities. They put all their security systems on there, and they can also monitor the pumps, turn them on and off, know how much gallons they're pumping, all on the fiber line, which before that it's all air cards, so it costs them some money. Midland Park, we're also helping Midland Park out with fiber lines. They're asking us to make a run this year, so we're talking to them about that. We do some of their traffic signals. That's about it.
Okay.
Great. Questions?
Could you go over your capital too for a signal?
Can I speak to the budget?
I'm sorry, could you actually, I'm sorry. We have a public comment.
I realize that.
Okay.
I was given information that was confusing.
Okay.
And I'm speaking to the signal corps budget. Is there a possibility that I can speak now?
Okay.
This is Mrs. Delaney from the Band Shell Committee.
Okay. So you're speaking just to this particular piece? Okay.
For one item.
Okay, let me have you use the microphone, so if you could grab that microphone, please.
All right.
I only have 5 copies, but...
All right, why don't I take those and I'll pass those out and you get the microphone. Here we go. Thank you, Jim.
I'm Joe Delaney, and I am a resident of Ridgewood, 158 Union Street. I am also the chair of the Casher Memorial Shell Committee. And I'm here because it's 60 years ago this summer that the shell was completed. And at that time, on June 17th, There was a gala concert held at the Shell as the fundraisers and the people that had worked on the Shell turned over the Shell to the town. And when I say a gala, I mean a gala. On June 17th, this was an extraordinary night. And I've given you some of the information that I got. That's the paper from the Ridgewood Herald News from June, I guess, 18th or 19th in 1958. Not only was there one column, there were two good spreads because it was such a big deal in the town. If anybody's familiar with the history of the town, the two women that wrote the articles, one was Helen Brainerd Smith, and the other was Dorothy, which have just left me?
Warren.
That evening, Mrs. Marion Tharber, who at that time was only called by her husband's name, presented the Shell to the town and to Robert Olson, who was our mayor at that point. The police department was there to guide the people into the concert out at that field. There was an invocation by Dr. Platt, who was the minister at First Presbyterian Church, and there was also a honor guard and from the, not the Knights of Columbus, from the the American Legion. The number of people there were 3,500. And they think there probably were more because they had put out 3,500 seats, but there were even more people in the sitting and with bringing their own chairs as we do now. So this was a big happening. This was a big deal. And the concerts performed prior to that raised $35,000 for that edifice. At that time, the sound system was part of the Shell. Obviously, 60 years ago, it's long gone. And I'm here tonight because our problem is that the sound system is a disaster. And last summer, and let me tell you, I know nothing about music, but I knew there was something very strange. And I kept changing my seat because sometimes the percussion was on, sometimes the vocalist was on. It just didn't work. And it wasn't the fault of the sound man because he was trying to adjust everything, and he's very good at what he does. When I started making contact to set up the concerts this year, what I ran into were comments by the performers, not complaining, but saying, oh, Ridgewood was such a delight to come to because we could really sing and play our music and be heard, and that's not happening anymore. We have 17 concerts coming up this summer. We have a diverse amount of concert types of music. There's gospel, there's rock, there's too much rock, so we can hear. But we do try to keep everything going. We try to have, we have jazz, we have swing, and we always get a large attendance, anywhere from 200 to probably over 600 people. But we really do need work, and I think that in the budget it's $10,500, and that's very little when you think of the number of people that come and enjoy it, and the symbol that it is of Ridgewood, what a great town it is. We're the only ones that have anything like this, and people really recognize what a great place it is. Your real estate people put it on their websites, advertising this is one of the gifts that we have in Ridgewood. So please, help us out. We want this to be another glorious season. I don't know if we can pull in 3,500 people each time, but we'll work on that. And thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to let you know that actually it is in our capital budget. It was asked for and recommended to be put forward. So as long as the council is willing to do that, it is in there.
Thanks. Thank you. Okay. Where were we? Okay.
Questions?
Do we want to ask questions?
Yeah, we're going to do the rest of capital. I have to do capital for traffic and signal.
Okay, yeah, let's go.
And then we'll
do
ask
that.
questions
We'll do
about
those
traffic
again.
and
Okay, go
signal.
ahead.
Okay, so everything under recommended, Jim, is what was agreed to. So, the CBD litter cans.
No, okay, on capital, we have a request for the Central Business District litter cans. For those of you that are not familiar, those are the see-through
litter cans. They emulate the ones the New Jersey Transit has installed. They are strongly recommended by the police department as a safety issue because the old style litter cans that we have, the concrete precast ones, unfortunately in this day and age, they are an additional hazard to our public. And there was an incident, I think about 18 months ago, that bore that out with a pressure cooker bomb. And with the clear litter cans and the clear bags that we employ, it's much easier to make a visual to see if there's anything inappropriate in a trash container, both from an observation by a police officer and by our sanitation crew that would have to empty and collect them. And this is also a continuation of the program the village has already initiated. We want to replace all of the litter cans with these see-through versions. We also have a request to replace a vehicle, a 1999 van. It's quite old, quite tired. Jim could discuss more about its use.
We use it for parking meter repairs, fire alarm repairs, any just small maintenance issues. It's very economical to operate, so instead of using one of the bigger diesel trucks that costs more per mile to run, we'll use this vehicle. It is 1998, it's got a few dents, it's starting to rust through, air conditioning doesn't work great, as you would expect from a 1998 vehicle, so we're looking for replacement.
The other item in the signal equipment, we have a $100,000 allocation for traffic light, new and replacement. That's for mast arms, for knockdown. If a traffic signal gets knocked down, we need a capital account to purchase the replacement parts. Our LED traffic lights, I think we put those out over 10 years ago. They're starting to fail. We're going to have to look at replacing them also, and that would be the funding mechanism for that task.
And some controller updates too.
Yeah, some of the controller updates. Traffic and signal also has building maintenance. So as part of our building maintenance, we're requesting a allocation of $45,000 for the doors on Village Hall. These would be the doors on level 1 to the main parking lot. They've been problematic. I think the mayor has even noticed that sometimes they have a ghost mind of their own. And unfortunately, it's their time to go. We're also looking at replacing some of the interior doors in Village Hall. Doors on level 3, 5 are cracked and not always locking at night. And if the person leaving after hours, when the doors have been locked, isn't very careful, they leave the door ajar, and that could be a security issue down the road. Also,
some of the doors on the first floor have been there since the renovation, have been through many floods. They've never been replaced. We've repaired them many times. They are fire-rated doors. They're a little bit expensive. They're starting to fail, and it's becoming more difficult to make repairs.
An additional item we have is the radio shed at Glen Avenue storage tank. That is the water company storage tank up at the top of Glen Ave. Central Dispatch, Police Department, Fire Department has a shed there with communication gear in it. The shed is failing. It's basically rotting away, and we have to put in a new shed. Because of the current shed has structures holding the various radio communication up, we have to construct a shed around the existing shed, then remove the interior, remove the walls of the old shed from the interior, because we're not going to, can't disturb the framework that holds the communication gear. We will also have to make a presentation on what we propose to, I think, the Midland Park Zoning Board. So that's a project that needs to get done pretty quickly. We have asked for, and it's been approved for $65,000.
That building's been up there since day one of Central, which is about 25 years. 99, all right.
Okay.
20 years.
93, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's time for a replacement. We do have, it looks like we got approved for $20,000 for the boiler replacement. Hold on. No, that's, those are the security grades at the water pollution pump stations. Jim had touched base on that. Just to further say, the Verizon has decided to disown our communications to our sanitary sewer pump stations, so we have to replace the wiring and alarms. We're going to use the fiber optic network, so we're going to have a capital cost to implement this, but afterwards we won't have any monthly costs or phone bills, so to speak, of to pay. The security in Andover has already been useful. I got text a picture of an employee smoking in the station the other day, which is strictly prohibited. So we have a nice piece of evidence to have a conversation with that employee, that you should not do that. We also have a request in for air conditioning at the train station and at the sanitation garage. The train station has been problematic in the heat of the summer. We've gotten a lot of complaints from our resident users of the train station, and we're looking to go away from various window units to a more central location, a centralized AC.
Yeah, we're attempting to cool that building with 2 window air conditioners, which just do it on a 100-degree day when there's many people in and out, the doors are constantly open. It just can't do it. And we have full-time people working in there, and it's very miserable for them.
And then the final 2 items are fire sprinkler repairs for the signal division and antifreeze, and also doors and frames at water pollution. The administration building at water pollution has a double door. Door has rotted out, and the mason area has crumbled. We can't use that entrance right now, and it has to be rebuilt.
You also have the AC in the sanitation garage.
Yes. AC in the sanitation?
There's a central air conditioner unit for the second floor of the sanitation garage. Has been problematic for us. We've tried many repairs, and it just cannot keep up on a very hot day. So we'd like to have that replaced.
So, I guess we'll go over those 2, with the building maintenance and repairs and the traffic signal.
Okay, questions?
Jim, thanks, by the way, for this. One of the items you have, which is on your, kind of your summary sheet, which is line item 64, signs and sign supplies. It's gone up significantly from before, and you said on that particular line item that had to do with aluminum prices have gone up significantly? Is that?
No, it's just the number of signs that have to be replaced. Like I mentioned before, we were having problems with the printer, so pretty much everything we did in 2012, 2013, when we did do a big push to replace so many of those signs,
yeah,
they have to be replaced again.
How many signs is that, by the way, do you know?
Thousands.
Yeah, they've actually faded. You almost can't read them at all.
Really?
Yeah.
In town?
Yes. In town.
Thousands of signs?
It's
well,
at least themselves, no parking signs, all sorts of different kinds of signs.
Wow.
What we're trying to do is use the old aluminum over again and refacing the existing sign to save some money.
Jeff, to your point, with the tariff discussions now, there may be additional costs associated with the raw materials that we need.
Got it. Okay.
There's one other thing that has to be considered with the signs. When the police department writes a violation on a municipal sign, we've unfortunately lost a few cases in court where the defendant would show a picture of the sign and the judge would deem it, obscured or you can't see it, and we lose the case.
Okay.
If you also remember back in that 2012, 2013, we were having a tremendous amount of street signs being stolen. So just about all the ones that were replaced have faded out. They have to be replaced.
Okay. I see we've taken out the restroom facilities and parks at Graydon. That it was 150,000. That's no longer. Oh, we have money for that?
We had money in for 2017, right? Okay. And so we hadn't used that yet. So that's,
okay.
And as we went through this, we realized we already had that.
Okay.
So that's why.
Yeah. And then the other item you have here is the generator for the village hall. Help me, I mean, it would seem to me that you probably would want to have power here at all times. I mean, so help me understand why you don't want to do that.
The FP to the right means footprint. So when we did the footprint study, this generator was included there.
Okay.
But since we haven't gotten to that stage yet, we put in the request, and instead of having to, we don't have to budget for it. It's already in the budget, capital budget.
Oh, it is?
Sorry, in the authorization back when we did the footprint study.
Okay. All right. So got it. I think that's it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you, Jim, and thank you for traffic and signal and everything you guys do in the village. Pretty much the only question I had was about the radio shed at the Glen Avenue tanks. I thought that might be a credit back from the water department, but since it appears that that's our shed, the village's shed, and it's not associated with the water department, it's just on that property, then that would be our expense. So
You're absolutely correct.
I didn't have anything else. Thank you.
Okay.
That was one of my questions. Councilman Hushay.
Hi, thank you guys. So I know the machine that makes the signs is pretty expensive piece of equipment. Is there any way to get to an agreement with some of the surrounding towns and sell them signs if they need some for themselves, that we can make them here and sell it to them?
We did, we had an agreement with Hawthorne, which they stopped having us make signs because I think all the ones that we made for them must have faded out. We are extremely busy right now in signs, and the people that are assigned to this, that's all they're doing is our stuff. So to take on another town, I think right now, it would just overload us too much.
Then I know Chris mentioned that you've been here for a while and you know how to find stuff. Can you find PSC&G for us, because they always seem to show up when they want to tear up the roads, just in relation to the street lights in the CBD. Just on South Broad, I saw 5 poles are out.
We have actually sent them numerous times lists of just the CBD area, and nothing. I've been on the phone with people from public service, and they were like, well, that's not my department, you have to call somebody else. I said, well, you know, can't you transfer me? No, you have to call, and the number they give you doesn't work, or, you know, the email that they give you doesn't go through, or their website doesn't work. So we're trying, but I remember a meeting a few years ago I had Chris over with public service, and they told me, oh, we replace every street light that you give us. I said, no, you haven't. We have one out for 23 years. And the guy looked at me and goes, what do you mean 23 years? I said, I told him exactly where it was. And I said, that street light's been out 23 years. And it was. I mean, and they've, you know, I had to embarrass them to get fixed, but they're horrible.
And to your point, a number of years ago, I think, when the deputy mayor was working for the Ridgewood News, we ended up with a very nice, embarrassing story for PSC&G on the street lights. It did get some action, but I think the time has too much time has passed since. Our assistant engineer is on the snowplow crew. On Wednesday night, he sent me a list of all the lights that are out in the CBD that we forward over to PSC&G. He does this every time he's out at night on a snowplow. He notes the lights that are out, and unfortunately, not much is changing.
I want to say also our police department has done it a couple times as they're patrolling at night, and they've given it to engineering to give. So we continue to give it to PSC&G, and we're doing our best to get them replaced.
The other issue I see is they've replaced, whichever ones they've replaced, there's like 4 different shades of lights throughout the downtown.
Yeah, that is correct. We did do the big relighting project on East Ridgewood Avenue a number of years ago. Those, if I recall correctly, are metal halide, right, Jim? Yes. We do have some high-pressure sodium lights. Those are the more orange and gloomy lights. And then what also affects the quality of light is the globe. The older globes get more obscured, they get filthy, and if they're plastic, they start to become opaque, and that reduces the quality of light also. And again, it's a PSC&G issue. What Heather said is, when we get a light outage report from the police department or from any of the public, our Secretary Yendi tracks it so we can see how many times a person has reported a particular location out. And when PS says, oh, this is the first time you told us, she goes back and said, not so fast, bub. And she'll say, I've reported this on this, and this occasion. And sometimes that helps us get it fixed. Sometimes it doesn't.
Do we keep a log of the times that we've contacted them?
Yes, Yenny does, because she does everything by email. Okay. So we have a database. Again, it helps us see how bad the problem is, and sometimes we can use it to shame PS to get it, to fix something. But it is a problem, you're absolutely correct. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Just a couple of questions. Did I understand you to say, and I may have misunderstood, that it was the machine, the sign machine, that wasn't properly functioning, and then what's the status?
Correct. The printer that we were using then, we were not using it properly. And like I said, we asked for training, we had to go out of state, and the policy of the manager at the time was no out-of-state travel, so we said absolutely no. And unfortunately, the machine broke. It has been replaced. We did get training on the new machine. We found out a lot of things that we did not realize and we were doing wrong, which we have corrected. And it seems that the signs that are being printed on our new printer seem to be holding up.
Good. Now, the cost involved in making those new signs, because that's the metal, and then there's the signage material. So is there a savings, because do you reuse the same sheet, and then how does that work?
Yes, so a typical no parking anytime sign. The blank may cost about $5. The sheeting may cost about $2, a little cost to print it. So as we're changing these faded signs, we're taking a new sign in. If it's not damaged, in other words, it hasn't been bent, or hit with something, we can reuse it again. We'll print just a new, costs us $2, reuse the old aluminum, and put that sign back out. So we saved about $5 on a sign. Of course, the bigger signs save more money. So.
And just going back to the PSE&G issue with the CBD lights, because I too have a little list of lights that I see all the time that are out. Are we just prohibited from, putting the light bulb in? Are we absolutely prohibited? Could we go down the road and, or is this?
It's a liability issue. The village, the bulk of the lights in the CBD, we lease from the village. The village leases from PSE&G.
Right.
We do have a few lights that are our own. Those all have to go through a metered connection. And the couple of CBD lights that PS has have meters on them. And the reason is, when we put like a decoration, like for example, the kissing balls or the snowflakes that uses electricity, they can get a reading on that, extrapolate it over all the locations that snowflakes or kissing balls are on, and charge us accordingly.
Can we fix them and send them the bill?
Well, that's what I was saying.
I don't know how successful, because I know like some of the older ones, we would have the same problem they have in getting the parts. That's was one of the main pushes when we redid the lighting on East Ridgewood Avenue. Is the old lights from the 1930s. The only thing that was still functioning on them was the cast iron pole. All the wiring had deteriorated, the globes had been obscured, and they couldn't get bulbs and parts for them.
Okay, and then my other question, just on the band shell, the sound equipment, that would resolve the issues that are being, you're comfortable that we'll be resolving it?
One of the main issues is the equipment's very old. Some of it dates back maybe 20, 25 years. Still using some of the amplifiers. So you're getting popping, you're getting static. As the wire gets old, you get more of that. We've had the system cut out in the middle of a show, and the guys, go berserk trying to figure out what's wrong. Very embarrassing, when you get your performer up there, and all of a sudden he loses his sound system. So it's getting old. We have been asking for a couple years. Unfortunately, I don't know how fast we're going to move with our budget, but her show starts in June. We're going to have to go out, find 3 vendors, and do the whole work, so it's going to be tough.
Well, the good news is that we're going to introduce the capital budgets when we introduce the budget, which is the end of March, and adoption at the end of April. So you should be able to do that. And you could be in the process of getting the quotes prior to it being approved, and then actually purchase it after. So we could award the contracts in May, is what I'm saying. And hopefully they could get it up and running.
Thank you.
So I have no other questions, but I just needed to thank you for getting those double-faced stop signs at Kenilworth and Spring, and then again at Spring and Van Deen. There was another accident there this morning. It's a terrible, terrible intersection, but I would be remiss if I didn't say thank you to you and to Chris and to everybody who helped.
You're welcome.
You're welcome.
Taken care of. It's much appreciated.
We have some more ideas based on some of the discussions that's gone on.
We have ideas too.
I'm sure you do.
Yeah, we'll share. We'll
Yeah.
have some ideas, and yeah, Jay's laughing. Okay, all right, we're good. No other questions? We're good? Okay.
Okay,
Oh, wait.
Yeah, on the revenues, you mentioned there's some revenues being generated. What is that number and where does that appear from a revenue standpoint?
Usually, if any work that Signal does for another community, the amounts are moderate, and like we just got a check from Glen Rock for a couple $100, and we deposited it with finance and just requested that it be credited to our labor and overtime accounts.
I think it's more of a reimbursement. We're getting 100% reimbursement for what we do for Glen Rock or anybody else. We do work for the Ridgewood Board of Ed, Glen Rock Board of Ed. It's 100% reimbursement.
Yeah, but it appears on it's revenue, so where is it going?
No, in this situation, it's offsetting the expense. So we're incurring $300 to fix a light or something for them.
Got it, okay.
We bill them, they send us a check for $300, we give it back to the account.
and the other point that Jim made is that it's saving us money by having Signal because of the fact that they are doing in-house repairs, and so we're not hiring contractors to come in, so.
Just on one last note, could we get a list of the lights that we've reported to PSC&G, because maybe we can meet with them or send it off to PSC&G ourselves and ask for a response?
Cost to replace a light bulb in a street light? Roughly, I mean, just...
Maybe $20 or $30 for the bulb, maybe. If it's an incandescent, it's going to be difficult. They don't make incandescents anymore.
Okay. No, I was thinking of the theory of doing it and sending them a bill.
I
just
think,
to get
you know,
it done.
actually, I wonder if that's not an arrangement we can make with PSC&G and say, let's work something out, because twofold, if they don't have the manpower to get it done and we can take care of it, then we, you know, it's a safety issue as well, obviously.
Absolutely.
So I think maybe we can work something out with them, and that's pretty much what I
We
was,
can see what we can do.
yeah, we can meet with them and see if they can facilitate.
To your request, how far back would you like to go for the outages?
28 years, no.
Well, no, I mean, I don't have computer records that far back, but
I mean, I would just, I think maybe a list of whatever's out right now, whatever the existing outages are now. I have to say, PSC&G is, you know, right this minute, I can hear my emails because people are getting their power back online throughout these outages. So they've been very helpful, and we have a good relationship with their people, so maybe we can work with them and take care of it. So whatever's out.
Well, that's going to be a little difficult because we only have the list of what we report. They do not tell us they fixed something.
So why don't we take the list of what was reported, and we'll take that and just see if we can't make some kind of an arrangement where we can do the work ourselves and bill them back. I mean, then we wouldn't really be in that position of reporting all the time, or we would only be reporting what we repair and billing back to them. So maybe there's just some arrangement we could make.
Okay. I'll send Heather a copy of the last couple of years of outage reports, and I think
We'll see what they say. I mean,
I'll forward that. I'll forward a request to PSE&G's customer care representatives and see if they'll consider the idea. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, just because when we go out and put the banners and things up, we could actually be killing two birds with one stone in some instances, and then the other, right?
We have the equipment and manpower to do it. Maybe they can send us these supplies, and then we don't have to spend any money.
Right.
You know,
which
send
would
us
be-
some bulbs, send us a case of bulbs, we'll go put them out.
Right.
The other thing is, if they're worried about license and the qualified staff, we have a licensed electrician on our staff that can pull any kind of permits necessary if they so choose. It's not they don't have, we can reassure them that the people that would do the work are qualified for that.
Okay, makes sense to me.
thank you. So water pollution control facility is the last item.
Water pollution has had a challenging year. On the plus side, we got a new sludge hauling truck. If you see it, you can't miss it. It's a nice bright blue. Unfortunately, it's been a little bit of a challenge getting the permits from DEP, this truck, down to our disposal venue, which is Passaic Valley, but we have started running a few loads here and there. The plant is currently, we're working on renewing our operating permit. It's a little confusing this year because we got a initial draft permit in the fall, then we got a draft permit, and we've just gotten another draft permit because the draft permit, the US EPA didn't like it. They felt that DEP didn't put enough, stringent enough limits on our discharge, so the DEP had to reissue a permit. We have to review that now. The second permit that they sent us, the initial draft, or the draft, we did challenge some of the limits that they're proposing for our discharge. They're being very strict on copper, and based on the testing we've done at the plant, that could be very problematic for us to address. It might be a capital expense in a few years down the road for additional treatment to remove copper. So that's definitely a challenge going forward that we have to be careful of. John Sperber, the superintendent down there, and the staff have been fixing a lot of our motors. We've gotten all 4 blower motors up to speed. We've replaced our sludge pumps and a number of other pumps. Last year, we did have an audit of our collection system from the US EPA. It's quite unusual. I did talk to a number of my colleagues in the wastewater industry, and they never heard of the US EPA coming out for such a system audit. I guess we were lucky. But they did, a couple of comments they made were, we have to write an operations and maintenance manual. I'm in the process of doing that. And they did note that we've had a number of backups and releases because we have to track those. Because when we have an overflow, we have to report it to DEP. And if someone has a backup in their home, it could result in a claim. And that information we took from the clerk's office and put it all together. We have a couple problems we're working on. One, as we mentioned briefly with Jim, is the pump station alarm systems. We've been, like I said, disowned by Verizon. We're working with Signal to get that working, and we're also using some overtime from a computer technician in the water company who's very familiar with that same exact SCADA system that we want to employ. So we're using his services, keeping it in-house to some degree. What was the other item? I think in the budget we had requested or consideration for a part-time driver for the sludge truck. I don't know if that is still going forward, Heather?
Part-time is what we had indicated.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
For which truck?
That would be for hauling the sludge, 1 load a day down to Newark. It's about a 5-6 hour round trip.
I thought you said slush truck. That's what then I realized you said sludge, but it was just the way it sounded. I wasn't sure what we were doing.
Well, with the right temperature, it could be slush. A little brown slushy.
Sorry, it's audio, everywhere is audio. Go ahead, sorry.
The plant also has a violation that we're working on to resolve from the DEP on our odor control system. We have a consultant working on that, and we hope to have a plan of action to go forward in this year. And that's about it for water pollution.
Did you do all the
Capital?
capital?
Yeah, you
Yeah.
may as well.
Because that's in here, the odor control, copper nitrates, bar screen, meters pump.
Yeah, capital, we had requested money for the odor control system. The copper and nitrates testing, that's the potential additional or lower permit limits. We are, like I said, I mentioned, we have started some initial testing to develop a baseline to show how much copper our existing treatment process removes from the waste stream. We're currently averaging about an 85% removal rate. It doesn't quite bring us to the permit limits that DEP is proposing. That's why I challenged them. That challenge will be resolved probably in the next few months. We also have to replace our bar screens. That's a key component in the process. Those are automatic screens where the flow enters this plant, and they generally remove the bigger material and debris that can't be treated with through our treatment process. If you would like, I can get more descriptive.
No, it's fine.
Okay.
It's all good. We're with you.
We're also asking for capital funds to continue upgrading the SCADA, replace failed pumps, meters, and so forth.
Okay. Questions? We'll start with Jeff.
Oh, I think I forgot something I'd be remiss in saying. Our sustainable energy project partner has withdrawn from the project this past year. We are currently in negotiations with them, so the sustainable energy production from the biogas has ceased. However, we are still taking in liquid waste, and that is providing a revenue that runs between $6,000 and $11,000 a month, and that's brought in and turned over to finance.
Is that 6 to 11,000?
Right, Bob, we're running around $6,000 to $11,000 a month. Again, it varies depending on seasonality, who gets what pumped out, and so forth.
Oh, okay, I get it. Okay, got it. All right. Questions, Jeff first.
Yeah, Chris, on line item 29, you have sludge hauling at $113,000. This is a new item for us. We usually keep our sludge.
Keep it?
Well, it looks like, so we're hauling it now, but we were keeping it before, is that?
No,
it's a
we're going to haul it now. We previously contracted out with a vendor to haul it when our previous sludge truck was no longer roadworthy. That process was for about a year, about 2.5 years. Then the council allocated funds, we bought a new truck, we took delivery, getting it permitted, so we're now back to hauling it. We have to haul, we have no other means of disposal unless somebody would like sludge.
So that's just the cost of operations of the truck back and
forth? Yeah, it's hauling, we haul, and then we have a tipping fee at our venue, Passaic Valley Sewage Commissioners in Newark.
Okay. Process sludge disposal also, I mean, it's up 20,000 from the previous year. This is line item, I forget what it is. Sludge removal, sewage disposal charges. They've gone from 100 to 120 for process sludge disposal fee for PSC.
That's our tipping fee at Passaic Valley.
Okay, so they're increased it by 20,000?
No, I think also in that line item is the charge from Northwest Bergen Utilities Authority. Correct me if I'm wrong, Bob.
I don't see it.
I'm
sorry.
The village has approximately 56 connections that, because of topographic reasons, flow into the Northwest Bergen collection system, and they charge us accordingly.
Okay. And then on the capital, it sounds like our water treatment facility is falling apart.
Wastewater treatment.
Wastewater treatment.
The last upgrade was completed in 2005. A lot of the equipment runs 24/7. It's starting to wear out. Pumps are wearing out. Digester mixers, we have to replace or refurbish 1, 2, 3 a year.
Thanks.
Good?
Yep.
Okay, Mike, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Chris. Well, it's the only department that could turn liquid septic sludge into a revenue stream, so I thank you for that. It's quite a feat.
You're welcome.
And other than that, that's my only comment. I have no questions.
Okay, Councilman Hushay.
No more questions.
Yeah, I have no questions either. None. Oh, actually, I do. That pollution, that DEP, that violation on the odor control.
Yes.
What is, just one more time, what is the status of that?
We have a consultant engineering firm working on that. We've had some investigations of the existing units, and then we're going to have to come to a determination whether the existing units can be refurbished to function in compliance with our discharge limits, or whether we have to look at a replacement system. The other thing I just suggested to our consultant, consideration if we can just remove the entire odor control system, because we hadn't been using it for a number of years and we hadn't gotten any complaints. So I want to see if that's even a possibility. Yeah.
All right, I have no other questions.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Chris, thank
I
you.
was wondering if you wanted to take a 5-minute break at this time, and then we'll come back.
5-minute break.
So 7:30, okay?
Okay.
Boy, do I clear out a room.
Something I said?
Okay, so I just want to call the roll call again because we returned from our break. Councilman Hache?
Still here.
Okay, Councilman Seaton?
Here.
Councilman Voigt?
Here.
Councilwoman Walsh is absent, and Mayor Newton.
I'm here.
Okay, our next department is the police department. We have Chief Jacqueline Lucky. We have Captain Forrest Lyons, Captain William Anamaruso, and Sergeant Jay Chuck.
Section.
Good evening, everyone. Just a little bit of highlights from last year to start off with. We handled over 26,000 calls for service, and that included over 200 arrests, all while we were training our 6 new officers that just came out of the academy in December of 2016. We managed to save on overtime. We came in under what we were originally asking and actually just marginally under even what we were granted. Most departments do try to budget between 6 and 10% of the total budget for overtime, which is where we're getting our numbering from. Some of the major calls from last year included a drug case where we had to obtain 3 different search warrants. We managed to seize a vehicle and had multiple arrests. We recovered 3 stolen motor vehicles, which again ended up in 3 arrests. And we were able to solve numerous burglaries into vehicles, all which ended in arrests. We had a motorcycle donated last year to the police department to be starting up our motor unit. It was a little bit delayed for a variety of reasons, but it has received very good feedback so far. The events that we have had it out from, people actually have gone out of their way to come interact with the motor officer and to check out the new bike. We are hoping in the long run to be able to expand on that and add additional motorcycles down the line. We also secured a donation to power wash and paint the Sallyport, which hadn't been done at least since we moved in here and probably had not been done since Hurricane Floyd. So thank you very much to 5 Star Painting who helped us out with that. With the assistance of the signal department, we were able to have some of headquarters repainted, including refurbishing our lobby, and we are hoping to finish the project this year. We did install the new scheduling software, which we spoke heavily about last year. We are still migrating everything over to it. By the end of the year, we should be fully vested. We have stopped some of the manual input and spreadsheets, and we are working on stopping all of them. We hired a full-time parking enforcement officer and 3 additional part-time officers to help give us parking enforcement coverage the entire time the meters are in effect. We did manage to conduct all of the unfunded state-mandated training, which culminated in 16 hours of active shooter training for every member of the police department. All officers in the department were also trained to carry and use tasers as a form of less than lethal force, and we were able to transition to new handguns for the department. We hired 2 new police officers who are currently in field training, and we are in the 2nd year of a partnership with the private company for crossing guards, where in fact we were given an award for innovation from the League of Municipalities, and we have fielded numerous inquiries from other departments. And again, as other departments come on board, it will only make it a little bit easier for us. We are fortunate that last school year we only had to cover 11 school posts, as opposed to the year before when it was 540. So far this year, we've only had to cover 5 school posts. So it's working out very well. It allows officers to concentrate more during the pickup and drop-off times on the traffic regulations, in addition to the safety initiatives of the school and all of our residents in the area. The new electronic ticketing platform is also fully deployed throughout our department, and we are in the process of signing the agreements for hosting so that we can begin to be involved with helping sell this to other departments, which again will just benefit us. Some of our goals for 2018, assisting our new officers to complete their field training so that we can begin to backfill positions. As you know, we've had numerous conversations about school resource officers. and trying to get officers back into the schools on a more regular basis. I'm also looking to hire 2 additional officers. As we put somebody into the school, I lose that officer for 9 months out of the year. So again, it's trying to complete the department. The other concern is as the multi-unit housing moves forward, the increased call volume, I really want to be ready to be able to handle that as well. We are looking to renew the leasing program. We have for the administrative and detective vehicles. We have found that to be a cost saving, keeps our vehicles in better shape as well. We are looking to purchase additional vehicles this year in order to maintain our procedure of replacing vehicles on a more timely manner. As we replace ours, we can then hand them down to other departments which don't need the emergency response capability of the vehicles. Again, we're looking at training officers on large-scale emergency rescue and response situations such as active shooter and civil unrest. With everything going on in this day and age, with what happened down in Florida, with looking at even what our school kids are looking at for the March Out of School, for putting together their Make Tomorrow a Better Day venues, we all need to be prepared and to have that training in case something happens. We need to continue to work with the village to find places for dry storage and ultimately for storage of the motorcycle. And we are looking to start a fund as more and more people are getting rid of their weapons and ammunition. We accept the ammunition, but we need a proper place to be storing it, and we need to ultimately make arrangements to get rid of it, which in the long run will be probably $5,000 to $7,000 the way it has to get shipped properly for destruction. Our biggest budget risks that we see coming up is, as always will be, our overtime, replacing officers in the schools, the development of the multi-unit housing, people that could retire at any point in time, and again, trying to get the proper training. It's not just about all of the unfunded mandates, but it is about the training for the officers. Not all officers need the exact same training, but all officers need the training. When looking at the capital budget, we have we were originally discussing 2 Tahoes and 2 Explorers. That was in the theory of handing some of the SUVs down to other departments. I know at this time it's looking more like we will have 2 of those. Again, continuing with the trunk vaults, that's the information that stores everything properly in the back of the vehicles, ensures that weapons are secure and not just being thrown around in the back. Continuing our program of body armor replacement. The weapons replacement is actually for our long guns this year. As I stated, we were able to replace our handguns already. The message board speed sign, having another one of those to use in a different location. We do get it out on a regular basis. The newer ones you can put even more information and messaging on as well. And then our portable radios, which has been a significant area of concern. When we purchased the initial radios, they were kind of bottom of the barrel and no longer made. And every few years, they need to be replenished, so it's a continuing program to purchase new radios. We were also looking at replacing our rain jackets. Those are 8+ years old, and they make ones now that are significantly more waterproof and reflective. Looking at some of the big deltas on our operating budget, I know legal advertising hasn't been used. We actually attempted to use it last year, and it's just astronomically expensive, so we're looking at other venues in order to post our job advertisements. With printing and binding, we actually found a new company that saved us a significant amount on our business cards, and we are looking at migrating our letterhead and envelopes over to them. When dealing with outsourcing of the crossing guards, that is going back out to bid at this time. We're looking at that with a percentage increase for the crossing guards. With our control over the cost of the salary of the crossing guards, it allows the company to make some money, but allows us to control that we're getting quality people for a quality price. Clothing and uniforms, the biggest issue that we found there, since our hiring tends to be in July, it means the officers aren't coming out of the academy until December, which means the bill doesn't come in until January. So there's a little bit of off-skirts there. That's where that line item can boost up on the different years. Books and publications, we did find a donor last year for some of the community policing material, but it is information that we will need to reuse. So although we didn't have the whole budget line, we are looking to maintain some of that equipment. Conferences and meetings, it's another CALEA cycle. They have made some significant changes. We are now in a 6th edition, being it all online, and we are gearing up for our 2nd annual inspection. Vehicle leasing, again, continuing with our leasing program and looking at possibly leasing a motorcycle as well. And then the last part on miscellaneous is the line for trying to budget for the ammunition destruction.
Questions? We will start with Councilman Boyd.
Jackie, thank you, by the way, for going through this. A couple questions for me. I just I need you to help me understand something. The overtime budget is about the same as last year. Is that about right? For this year, the overtime budget, it's about the same.
More or less.
Yeah. So you had mentioned last year that you guys were putting together you had a software program to help you kind of figure out where people needed to go with scheduling. And the hope was that that was going to improve on the overtime. And I'm a little, I don't understand why that hasn't helped. In other words, why you have the same overtime budget when that was supposed to help you. That's, I guess, my first question. Could you help me understand that?
Just 1 second. Just to remind you,
yeah.
The budget that was proposed last year by police was about $550,000 for overtime. When we talked about the scheduling system being implemented, we lowered that to $400,000. So there's a savings already.
But it's back up at 480.
Well, if you look under the proposed column, I brought it down to 380. So if you go 4 columns from the left, I brought it down to 380. So there's still, it's closer to actual.
Okay. So okay, but still, wouldn't it help improve upon that overtime? I mean, even though it did, the understanding or the assumption was that it was going to improve upon it significantly.
Well, it was significant, trust me, and we're moving forward to get there. There's still parts of that scheduling system that aren't implemented, that they're not comfortable with yet, so it's a work in progress. So I think from start, I think we're 150,000 to the better for that system.
Okay, so, but do you anticipate any better or more improvements in overtime? In other words, are we going to save more money?
Now I'm going to give it back to her.
And the answer to that is not necessarily, and part of that is there are issues that are always beyond our control, between bringing people in for storms, between the mandatory training and the necessary training, which isn't always the same thing, but there is a lot of necessary training. In that, we do a lot of schedule adjustments for individuals, but it doesn't count for everything. If someone's going to a 5-day class and then they come in and there's an incident that they help handle at work, we're still going to have some of that overtime. The caseload that is beyond our control will still have a significant amount of the overtime, which is where most departments on an annual basis budget between 6 and 10%, because a lot of it is those unforeseen costs. If you look back at the 2016, where we were almost $800,000 in overtime, we have made a significant impact on our overtime, and the scheduling software came in halfway through last year.
Thank you. That helps immensely. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Just give me a second or two here as I go through the... Special Resource Officer, which is line item 20020, at 180,000. Is that for one person? Yes? And the experience level of that person, help me understand, that's, I would assume that they're fairly seasoned to be, yeah?
Correct.
And would that be somebody necessarily from, you would hire outside, or would you kind of inside that?
I would never use somebody from outside because that person isn't vetted at all, and that's where I would be using a member of the department who's been around for a while. We know how they work.
Okay. And there was talk as well about having I guess a retired policeman to also do this for 50,000, and that's off the table?
That's
the Board of Ed.
That's a Board of Ed issue.
Oh,
The
okay,
Board
so-
of Ed Class 3 doesn't replace an SRO by statute, no?
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay.
So the special resource officers for the schools, or is it for a whole bunch of different stuff? I'm sorry.
Special.
Yeah, we have a...
special, but it's school. It says special.
It's school.
but
It's school. It's schools.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, correct. School resource
This also
officer.
includes benefits, so this isn't their salary, but I just want to throw that number in.
Okay, so there'd be two officers then for the schools, probably, if we go ahead and do this. Yes, there'd be one who's kind of part-time.
In order to have a second officer,
Yeah.
we really also still need to be hiring additional officers, because if I put two in now, we're not making any other forward progress.
Yeah, okay. Got it, thank you. Part-time records clerk. Help me understand what the need is for that. That's a line item 01M. It's at 22,000.
That's the extra time at the window on
Oh, it is?
Thursday nights. Yeah.
Really? It's that much? Wow.
Well, it's 4 additional hours per week for,
Correct. Right now, it's 4 additional hours on Thursdays.
right,
For court.
right.
While
Well,
court is
on
open,
court
because
night.
that's when a lot more people are coming and going.
Got it.
We do tend to have some attorneys that come last minute to pick up packets.
Okay. Line item 029, janitorial services at 25,000. Oh, you took it out? Okay. It's in here, but you took it out.
I keep trying.
Oh, okay, I did not, remove it. Sorry, my bad. So the, help me understand the rationale between the lease program and the purchase program for vehicles. How does that work? I mean, it sounds like the lease program is working pretty well, and we're still buying vehicles?
So we lease the administrative vehicles, so the ones that don't say police all over them and have the more subdued lighting. They're not set up, they don't have the prisoner compartment to it.
Got
They
it.
don't have the windows controls taken out of it. We lease the vehicles that the type of vehicle you would be driving. We just add a little bit of equipment to it. If you tried to lease the other ones, and there is a program to do it, but you don't get as much back in the long run at the end of the lease because of all of the fixes that would need to be done to the vehicle.
Yeah.
That the company provides is outstanding, and it's a cost savings to us by using them.
Okay. And then the e-ticket service, explain that to me, how that's going to work. E-tickets. I mean, this is something that you're going to be able to go ahead and send immediately to the to the person who's violated something
So it's,
online? If-
it's not online.
Yeah,
So the officers and parking enforcement walk around with it, the officers, it's in their car, and they do all of the data entry. Instead of handwriting a ticket, they do it in this program.
got it.
The program then prints out the ticket, and we are giving the individual a printed ticket.
Okay, fair enough. Uh, Really small item, but ammunition destruction, 1,000. Can't you use that in the shooting range? That ammunition?
No.
You can't?
No.
Why not?
Because it could easily explode.
You don't know how old it is,
You don't know what it is, you don't know how it's
It's
been
really
kept.
old ammunition.
It's stuff that people have found in their attic, in their basement, and anywhere
okay.
else.
I thought it was just old ammunition. You
No,
don't
not
have
our
it.
old ammunition.
Yeah,
We
okay.
use all of ours.
Okay.
No, this is from residents who, somebody passes away and they're getting rid of it and they bring it in to us. And we can't in good conscience say, we're not taking it, and then it ends up in one of the garbage trucks and causes a massive problem.
Got it. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Chief. Do we have any kind of like dollar amount on the leasing program for the vehicles, thereabouts, that this has saved since it's been implemented?
We could come up with it.
Any rough ideas?
Yeah, so for the amount of vehicles that we're getting,
I just need you to use a microphone, please.
Including the maintenance, too.
including, big voice, including the maintenance, the maintenance saving cost is about 80, we're spending about 20% per vehicle that we normally would spend through the garage. So it's about an 80% savings cost. For the amount of vehicles that we're leasing, it's a 60% savings cost. So basically, we're leasing, I'll give you easy numbers, we're leasing five cars for 3 years, and it's costing us 2.5 cars. It's costing us 2.5 cars if we would have bought them. And for the same time frame that we're supposed to turn the cars around, we're spending half the money.
Right, and you're getting fresher cars too. Every 3 years you get a new lease in then, so it's not
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
you buy the car and then you patch it together for 12 years until there's no floor left.
Yeah, exactly. And, and right,
where it came from.
right around 3 and 4 years is when we start to see a significant decline in the health of our vehicles. That's when the air conditioners go. That's when the transmissions go. That's when your big cost things come and attack you.
That's where they really stop being the first responder vehicles, that they may still be fine to be used and put back together by the garage for some other vehicles on our patrol vehicles. We're all in the same time frame of years.
Okay, thank you. And then the school resource officer, I know that was approved in, I believe, 2016. So why is it taking now almost 2 full school years to have this implemented?
So in 2016, when Chief Ward agreed to it, he and I had massive differences of opinions, because in order to have enough people here, to have enough seasoned officers, to have that to choose from, I said all along that it wouldn't be until probably the 2018-19 school year before we could get somebody in. The biggest concern I have is taking some of our senior members off of the patrol squad, and I can potentially have an entire squad that has no more than 3 years on. And really, until you get to about 5 years, are you comfortable with handling, and you've seen a lot, but you still haven't seen everything. And you need those seasoned officers to be in the school because they are handling things by themselves.
So what are we doing now, like, to protect the schools? I mean, given this day and age, it doesn't seem like school shootings are going away. Before 1999, this wasn't even, people didn't even imagine it. And then all of a sudden it happened, and it happened again, and it's more and more frequent now. So, I mean, I think it would help everybody to know what we're doing, for the rest of this school year at least.
So fortunately, we do have a very good relationship with the schools, and officers, while school is in session, officers go into the schools. They check in at the front desk like everybody else does, but they can walk through the school. And the biggest benefit of that is the officers get more familiar with the schools, and everybody in the school gets more familiar with seeing the officers walking around. It's not a scheduled, it does depend on call volume, but it is part of their normal patrol, is stopping at a school and walking around and seeing what they see.
And then you'll expect that we'll have somebody fully in the schools by September of this year, I guess, next school year.
We just posted the position for school resource officer. There is a training class coming up in April. There's quite a few training classes that people need to get to prior to putting them into the school. But we are working on training officers.
Okay, but even if they go to several training classes, maybe there's 2 or 3 or 4 more that they have to go to, I would really suggest to get somebody in there in September who's, because active shooter is basically training enough. You want to have that added benefit so you can deal with family issues or you can deal with different issues that come up in the schools, but I think most importantly, have an active shooter is very important in case, God forbid, anything were to happen.
That is true across the board for all of the officers, active shooter training, everybody gets trained in that. Again, being able to use the schools for that training is a benefit to all of the officers because they get to learn the schools. But a lot of the training that's needed is, as you said, the family counseling, some of the detective classes, because the individual will also be the juvenile detective. So there is a lot of that additional training, but we are gearing towards being able to put somebody in the September school year.
Okay, good. And then my last question is not entirely for you. It's probably you could split this with the school maybe, but the open campus at the high school might have been nice 10 or 20 years ago, but is there any way the police department could suggest strongly that an open campus situation at our high school might not be the safest route to take in this day and age?
We've actually had some conversations with that, and some of the issues are simply a matter of there are so many kids, and with everybody eating during some of the same time frames, there isn't a way to have everybody stay in the school at all times.
Wow, really?
Yeah, we're approaching something like 2,200. I was going to say 2,000. 2,200 in the schools.
I don't know, when I went to school, it was more like prison. You couldn't even go out and get a book from your car in the parking lot. So I really don't understand the whole open, you'd get stopped by a security guard and sent back to class. So it's just,
it was
seem like
open
a good
campus
idea.
and only a 3-year school in the past. It is now a high school, which is a 4-year school. It has expanded through the time, but that's a lot of kids all in the same place at the same time when everybody, all of those kids are trying to have lunch period between 11 and 1 and finding a place for that. I know that they have had days that kids are sitting in the hallways on the ground eating their lunch, which isn't really conducive.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, Councilman Hache.
Thank you, guys. I'm surprised how fresh you guys looked, considering how the past couple of days we had with the weather. It's just, I hate to go back into the OT, but first of all, I'm elated that we've been able to bring that number down from 2016, slicing it by more than half. So that's great news. Now, in terms of the school resource officer, so in order to put 2 SROs into the schools, we need to hire 2 more officers, obviously, just to put it back so that we're
to balance.
To balance out. What is then in the interim? What would you say is will be the estimated overtime cost for 2 officers to sort of cover those shifts until we get 2 guys in? What's the cost per officer, OT wise?
It varies widely because it depends on the officer. Give a basic on it, please. Yeah, it does. So if the average overtime rate, and again, it can be significantly higher or lower than that number.
Sure.
$92 per hour.
92 per hour. Okay.
So taking someone off patrol, if you look at the 2016 number when we had the 791, that was 6 officers that we were short. So if you take 400,000 as a normal number, it was an additional 400,000 for 6 officers, so 150, 200,000 by taking people off of patrol prior to having replacements.
Bring up the fact that an SRO or 2 SROs are great to have in the schools, and they help with the juvenile investigations, but they're not full-time security, which is what a retired officer would be.
Sure.
Because what I don't want people to mistake an SRO for is someone who's there from open to close every day school is open. They may be there 80% of the time, 70% of the time, but if there is an investigation regarding a student, they're off-site conducting that investigation. That's their purpose. So a lot of people say, well, where's the SRO? It's Monday and it's 8 a.m. They should be here. Maybe they're on a thing. That's why people have to look at bifurcating this into SROs are crucial. They're vital. We definitely need them. I'm not arguing that at all. But you have to understand what their purpose is. Their purpose is to identify and mitigate future threats and investigate those possibilities. They're not armed security in the schools. Armed security in the schools come from retired officers who are there morning to afternoon every day, and when there's a threat, just respond to that. They're not doing investigations, they're not leaving to come back to headquarters to run backgrounds. All that stuff cannot be done on site. So an SRO, while you'll say we have SROs in school, where were they? They might be at headquarters running backgrounds on threats, perceived threats, backgrounds, whatever they're doing at the time. So I just want to make sure, because a lot of people say, oh, the SRO will be in the school. They may not be there more than, again, 80% of the time, 70% of the time, again, depending, situation dependent. So it's very important to know if we had 2, that number could go up, definitely probably 80% of the time. But with 1, depending on what's going on, they won't always be consistently right where you need them when you need them.
And it's a matter of which school.
Right, they vary their schools. They're not
Right.
always in the high school, they're not always in the grammar schools or middle school. They switch.
It makes sense, because when I've spoken to various administrators in the Board of Ed, they say, oh, no, we need both. We need the security guard, yeah, definitely, and we also need the SRO. Now, a lot of what we've been talking about, and I know that this has been an ongoing discussion, I know, obviously more because of the recent incidents in Florida, we've been talking about sort of staffing as an increased measure of security. Is anything here in the budget being allocated towards technology, maybe surveillance equipment, things that can help kind of speed up our response, or are we comfortable that what we have today in place is adequate?
No, that's some of the training, even more so than equipment. We also do need to get some of the equipment. We have some, I believe, from last year's capital, and the problem is getting the training. They haven't had a lot of the training in our area, and again, with some of the mandates of not going out of state, there is some fantastic training in other areas, but trying to get it is a little bit more of a challenge.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief, Captain, Captain, Sergeant. I just have to think that as we're talking about this, there were some things that necessarily we don't want the public to know in terms of our training and safety initiatives. I think that some of those are best held close to the vest, just for security purposes. So I'm thrilled that, with the overtime numbers, because I know we set out back then to really cut that back, and I think it's really a remarkable achievement. What was the cost of the software, the scheduling software? Do we recall? Was it $30,000? So it's money well spent. We got a really good bang for our buck with that. Yeah. Jackie, just Chief. Just in terms of how many officers and bringing in new officers as it relates to school resource officers. I recall, and I don't actually remember what year it was, when we had, was it 8, 9 retirees?
15, 2015.
Was it 2015, that everybody, that whole group retired?
Jump ship? Yes.
They all jump shipped, and our school resource officer
was amongst them.
And the importance of a school resource officer was not just doing investigations, but also just building up confidence in the students.
He had actually, sorry to interrupt you,
No.
he had actually been pulled out of the school prior, and part of that was the whole budget issue as well of who's paying for the
Right.
school resource officer.
Right. So I just would want to think that as we're thinking through the school resource officer, that we don't train somebody as an SRO that's so senior that we put ourselves in jeopardy of watching someone retire and put ourselves right back in the exact same position we've been struggling to get through for the past couple of years, because we've been back and forth with this for quite a number of years. That's why I always think we should have two, a young one and more seasoned one to show and one to go, just, kind of like.
The good news is we have a younger squad now. And so those who are seasoned are 5, 6, 7 years, and they've still got quite a ways to go.
Yeah.
Maybe they're 8 or 9 years, but they have still a long way to go before they get to 25.
Right. Do we have a cap number on the police department, personnel-wise?
No,
we don't.
We
We don't.
did at
We do
one
not.
time, or we don't?
No, what we had was that there was caps on like lieutenant sergeant's actual numbers.
Right, okay.
Now what it is that the manager would come to the council and give what he or she thinks is needed.
Okay.
And then the council would approve or not that funding.
Okay, all right. And if you hire, what are our current numbers in staffing?
Including the two that are on field training, we have 45.
And so we want 2 more, which I think is reasonable. Okay. And so you're looking at those 2 new hires going to the police academy in the summer again?
Yes.
Okay, good. I did want to ask, in terms of the budget risks, overtime, multifamily housing, would that be something that is requiring the developer to have police on, that they have to hire, or is this kind of where we're throwing this at the taxpayers and that there's no obligation on their part to hire traffic control or anything?
I'm not even dealing with it as traffic control. It's simply adding that many more residents and that many more calls for service and issues.
Okay. Okay. And one last question. Just in your, let me go back to capital. Did we ever add anything in for the detective bureau to upgrade and clean that up, or it's just never happened?
I think we have flooring, don't we? We have
Carpeting.
or flooring, or maybe flooring, yeah, that we are going to do,
Okay,
so.
all right. Okay, good. I'm good. Thank you. We're good. Anyone else? Any questions? Get questions? Okay.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Okay.
Thank you.
So the next department is fire department, and we have Chief James Van Gore and Captain Scott Schmidt. Tab 11.
Sorry? No, I don't.
Well, good evening.
Hello.
Just going to go over a couple of major efforts that we did this year and accomplishments. In 2017, Ridgewood Fire Department responded to 2,588 emergency calls and conducted 2,919 fire prevention inspections. The responses range from minor calls to life-threatening situations. We hired and trained 3 firefighters to fill open positions created by retirement, and one of the ones that we hired was the first female in Ridgewood. So with that, we worked with the engineering department, signal department, building department to make improvements to the firehouse. We took a storage closet and made it into a bathroom, female bathroom and locker room. We replaced the shingles on the roof, and we updated communications desk and equipment. We hosted a bunch of leadership classes, fire inspector certifications, firefighting, emergency medical technician courses, active shooter training we had, confined space and mel safety training. We purchased a new pumper and outfitted it to replace our 1989 fire pumper. It was purchased with 2016 capital. All firefighters were engaged in community outreach by going to schools, teach fire prevention, the department open house, conducting Sunday school drills, touch a truck in downtown Ridgewood. We also participated in Super Science Saturday at the high school and Camp Sunshine, Public Safety Day for their summer camp. This year, we're going to do some, we have to hire again. We had 2 people retire, so we're going to have to do fill 2 open positions. We applied for a FEMA grant, Assistance of Firefighting grant, along with Glen Rock. The grant will be used to purchase radio equipment for dispatching of both towns' fire department and ambulance. The new equipment will replace 20-plus-year-old radios. This year, the Insurance Services Office, ISO, is coming back to conduct a review. The last time they did it was 5 years ago. We went from a Class 3 to a Class 2. So this year, they're going to come back and do a review to make sure we're still at the same standard. So that takes up a lot of time. They go through a lot of paperwork. We're also trying to apply for the POSHA SHARP program, it's called. And it's like being accredited. The police are accredited. This is our way of being accredited. They look through all our standards, all our equipment, make sure we don't have any like big accidents or a lot of injuries. And once you get in the SHARP program, they won't come and do inspections for 2 years. And then once you up it after the 2 years, then they'll leave you alone for 3 years. So it takes a lot of time to do that. Let's see. Then we'll go right into the budget. Revenue for fire prevention last year was $248,827. We're not recommending any increase in fees or permit fees. Operating budget is going to go up 1% over last year's budget. Like I said, we had 2 people retire, so we're hiring 2 new people at a lot lower rate, and that's helping with the budget this year. Our capital budget, we're going to replace a 2006 Ford Expedition with another SUV. It's used by the Inspection Bureau. It also responds to emergency transport firefighters and equipment. We're going to replace various equipment that falls under the capital plan. We have to replace our scuba tanks, our SCBA bottles. The old hose damaged. We have purchased confined space equipment and some active shooter equipment, vests and tourniquets and stuff. We're going to replace our 1998 International Rescue Truck. Because of its age and its design, it was designed more for equipment that we carried 20 years ago. We carry a lot more equipment, we do a lot more things. It's underpowered. All the NFPA, all the different companies recommend that they replace after 20 years. It gets harder to find replacement parts for them. That's pretty much it. Pretty simple.
All right. Councilman Boyd.
So Jim,
Quiet.
thanks for
You're
doing
so
this. I'm sorry?
You're so quiet. It's like no question.
I'm just curious as to why the budget's going up so much, the 1%.
Why the what?
Why is it going up so much, 1%? I mean, that's way too much.
It's as low as I could get it. I tried.
Just a couple of questions. Rental of fire hydrants. Who do we rent them from?
We rent them from Ridgewood Water.
Oh, okay, so that money is given to Ridgewood Water?
Yeah.
Okay.
Every town pays for it. We're actually a lot cheaper. I talked to other towns about it too, because when I first became chief, I couldn't believe we rent fire hydrants. And we're like half of what other towns pay for them. So it's actually not too bad.
All right. I think that's it. Thank you very much.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you, Chief.
Thanks.
I don't have any questions. Your budget's basically flat, so good work.
Okay. Councilman.
Actually, I do have a question. I was hoping to see the, a line item here for those cots that you guys had from like early 80s or something. I was hoping you were looking to replace them. So.
Oh, we did. We replaced them last year.
Oh, that was okay. That was
Yeah, it was in the capital budget last year. Yeah, they were
so
pretty
good.
gross.
All the ones were replaced?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yes, thank you. That was bad.
No question. Thank you.
Yes.
I have, no question. The two that when are we hiring two?
Yeah, we're hiring two. This went through the civil service process, which took a long time this time around. Because once you certify the list, then they have so many weeks to reply. Then you send it back to the state, and they have to go through a physical. And the state took like a month and a half. So now they're going through their background check. And as soon as it goes through the background check, then we can start the process of, you know. Yeah.
And I did have a question. Let me just see where it was. Hang on. No, I guess that's it. Nope, I'm good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Yeah, that was easy.
Thank you.
All right, good night.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Captain.
Thank you. Good night.
Okay, so we have several more things that we'll be discussing: deferred charges, statutory expenses, utilities, and shared services. So, Mr. Winfrey's going to discuss those items.
Tab 20, please. Yep, that was the email from today.
You say tab
20, please.
Thank you.
Oh, it's here. It was the hard.
So I gave you hard copy if you didn't have the ability
That was the latest
download.
email too, right? That was the one.
I think mine's probably in here now, according to Dylan.
Okay.
All right, good. All right.
So under deferred charges, we have a statutory requirement for the $250,000 appropriation from last year for the reassessment, for the master plan, rather, I'm sorry. So we're required to provide 1/5 of that every year, so that's $50,000. Last year was the last payment on the reassessment that we did, I think was back in 2012 maybe. So that's a wash. And under the capital ordinance, we have some unfunded ordinances that we contribute approximately $5,000 a year to pay them off. That's a result of an audit comment that we had a couple of years ago, so we budgeted the $5,000 for that. Capital Improvement Fund is consistent with last year, $157,000 to be added to the Capital Improvement Fund in the capital side, which are used for down payments on improvement authorizations. Under our interlocal municipal services agreement, we currently have consolidated dispatch and 911, 911, which is slightly higher than last year. Washington Township Fleet Services, we budgeted money last year, but the agreement was never fulfilled, so that was removed. However, we are in the middle of signing a contract with them, and we will be presenting a resolution to council to engage in that new contract. Board of Education vehicles, same as last year, $10,000. But again, we also are considering an agreement with the Board of Ed for the maintenance of vehicles, and we're waiting to get some hard numbers from Fleet as to what that amount would entail. And lastly, planning and development, we had partaken in a shared service agreement with Hanover for our planner, and we no longer use that service, so that you won't see that for this year. The next tab is statutory expenditures. These are the required contributions we make to the pension plans, to Social Security, Police and Fireman Retirement System.
What tab is that?
It's the same tab, 2 pages later. So in the first section, we have accumulated leave compensation. This is where we budget money for terminal leave. This is consistent with the past 2 or 3 years of $400,000. Our salary negotiation costs are where we budget for salary increases for management, blue and white collar employees. Social Security, again, statutory as far as what we have to contribute, and the PERS, Defined Contribution Program, Consolidated Police and Fire, which only shows $1, and that's because they have never billed us for the last 2 years. And Police and Fire Retirement System, which is up approximately 4%. So overall, the statutory, we're looking at approximately 3% increase compared to last year. Any questions on either of those two?
Yeah, I had a question about dispatch. That's the number $687,000. Is that just what Ridgewood pays for 911 and dispatch?
Yes.
Is there any way we could partner with the county, maybe not go to the county, but partner in some way to reduce costs for that? Or could we explore that and bring them in? Because, I mean, that seems like an awful big number to pay for 911 and dispatch.
We can look into that. What I can tell you is that they are looking at bringing in other municipalities, and they're very close to signing with 2 possible, and even a possible third one, which will be new, which will bring in additional revenue, which will then reduce the amounts that both Glen Rock and Ridgewood pay for dispatch. We are already the backup for the county, so I can, reach out and see possibly what else could be done, but
yeah, I'd definitely like to do that because, like I said, it just seems like a pretty big number, and if there's nothing you could do about that number, there's nothing you could do. But, if you reached out to the county and maybe brought somebody in, or they looked at it and said, maybe we could partner in this way, or do something to try and reduce that cost, I think that would be helpful.
Sure, we'll consider it.
as I said, those new towns will help to reduce that, not for this year, but going forward. We did, and we did look at it, and there was nothing. We had the chiefs come in and explain why they believed in our local dispatch. The other thing I can tell you is that under the new leadership, the director has been there for a year. It's been excellent. He's very responsive to all of the chiefs. He has a great number of dispatchers and has training, which is excellent. And and the budget is right on target, where before it was kind of not quite where we wanted it to be. So I can say that now we feel very confident financially as well as with personnel that we're stable, and he's done a great job. So.
Yeah, I do remember the conversations, but then we didn't bring anybody in from the county to kind of counter what was said by the chief. So I mean, just to round it out, and again, if there's cost savings there and it doesn't interrupt service and it doesn't degrade service in any way, shape, or form, I'd be more than willing to explore that and see. And if it leads nowhere, it leads nowhere. But if we could save some kind of money, then let's do it.
Good idea.
Thanks.
Councilman Harshay, have any questions?
I mean, I'll just add on, that's a big number, 687. If there's anything that we can do to kind of put a dent in it, definitely I'm all for it. I mean, that was the only sort of big number that kind of popped out at me in terms of where we can do to make a significant contribution towards reducing some of these numbers, so.
So I think maybe it would be helpful. I hear the dispatcher, I hear the radio go constantly, so I know the kind of calls that are processed. Maybe it's helpful to have a breakdown of how many calls go through there, how many, whether they're police, fire, what the nature of the calls are, and also how many times did we was our system utilized as the county backup? Because depending on how many times you had to revert to that system, it might tell a story. So it might be helpful.
Okay, I'll get that information.
No other questions on that, right? Okay.
Nope.
Go ahead.
Tab 21. Miscellaneous other, this is basically our utility costs. We looked at what we spent last year, bumped it up a little to, $1.2 million. I'm proposing it's probably going to be a little higher, $1.3 million, but there is some flexibility in there. But I just, based upon what I've seen the first month or two, seems like they're climbing a little bit, so I just put a cushion in there. But certainly, we have some flexibility there if we need to cut it back.
Do we ever look at the buildings in municipality and others presentations of the League of Municipalities? They talked about...
Jeff, could you just put your microphone so we can hear?
Yeah, so the League of Municipalities had a presentation, I think, Heather, you and I were at that one, where they actually proposed, they would help fund, the kind of tightening up some of the windows from, wind coming in, cold coming in, and, based off of that, we could save, a certain amount of money off of utility charges. Have we, and you may have done that in the past.
We've done it in the past. We can certainly, see if they'll come in and do I think it's an energy audit or something like that.
Yeah.
And so we possibly could have them come back in and do it. Obviously the building's older.
Yeah.
And there could be additional areas we could improve upon.
And then I guess the way that works is that we go out and just kind of borrow the money to kind of fix the building in some form or another, and we save on the cost of the actual, utility. Yeah.
Right. I don't know if it would be equal, but yes, supposedly there are energy savings by doing that.
Yeah. Okay. That would maybe something we might want to look at.
We could start with my office.
Really? Is it that cold?
Well, people come to my office to put their lunch on my desk so it keeps cool. Only kid.
No, it's, beer, it's the beer that's on your desk.
All right, we won't. But anyway, you could tell that the insulation has collapsed in the walls and stuff because you feel the cold coming through it. So that would probably be a good project.
Yeah.
Well, if you guys want to go forward with an energy audit at any time, maybe give me a heads up, because I know there are grants available for energy audits through Sustainable Jersey, and because we are certified, we might be able to get some money towards those actions, and
Sounds great.
we could defer some of the costs.
Yeah.
Take advantage of Sustainable Jersey since we're there.
Moving on.
That's it.
Really, that's it? Get out.
She wrote. You get home early.
Okay, so our wrap-up next steps for next Friday, the 16th, we have municipal court, health department, tax assessor, emergency services, emergency management, library, village manager, village clerk, village attorney, planning board, and elections. So, and village council, village council also. So, and that will wrap up the departments, and then we'll discuss on the 21st, current fund revenue surplus, different funds. We'll do head count and the overall budget and have an overall number at that time. I know we've added some things. We haven't taken too much out. I think the council has to determine in that meeting on the 21st what they're looking for as an overall capital expenditure, because we have, as I said, added some things and taken some things out. And also we have to determine the funding for final head count, because some have asked for employees, some have been increased from what we came to you with. So that's just something we have to discuss on the 21st to wrap it up.
I'm getting a sense just from looking, because I don't have the hard kind of it's kind of a squishy number, but this is above 2% so far, considerably above 2% from the previous year. Is that right?
I can't say it's considerably. I'm seriously, I don't have a number. It probably is above 2%.
So what do we do?
We have to make some decisions.
Okay. So it can't be above that 2%, in other words.
I didn't say that. It's what council wants to tolerate.
No, I get it.
So it's,
I get it, yeah. If we want to tolerate above the 2%, we have to go out for a referendum.
No, we have to talk about the effect on the tax rate. When I say 2%, I mean you can have 2% appropriation above last year, but if there's no, you may not have a 2% impact on your tax rate. There's a lot of factors that you have to take into consideration, so.
Okay, yeah. Any feel as to when you can get us a kind of a big number, kind of the 30,000 foot level number? So we know where we're headed here, you know, because I'm making guesses here.
We're meeting on the 21st?
Yeah.
You should have it.
Okay, good, thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay, so we go back to public comments. And since there are no members of the public here, we'll just take a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thank you.
Where's Dylan?